Welcome back to the channel. This is Trinity Storm and you're watching fourth part of What If Naruto Became Curse of Hatred. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to the channel. Now wasting no time, let's start the story.
As night fell, the sky turned black, and the moon shone brightly over the world. Because it's so light, it felt like a woman's soft touch on every shadow. The sky was covered in clouds, and the dark shapes of the clouds made it hard to see the stars. They were always following the moon like slaves. There was a sweet sound like a lullaby coming from the wind howling through the trees and leaves. It had only been one day since Naruto and Kisame Hoshigaki fought. The famous swordsman of the mist agreed to fight another member of the Akatsuki organization. Ryu Yokazi, or you may know him as Naruto Uzumaki. He had held back during the fight. He liked going up against tough opponents because it got his heart racing. He liked battles and kills that were quick and easy, so he didn't have to waste chakra. But the blonde had too much chakra, so he wanted to get rid of it all. Both of them felt a rush of adrenaline go through their bodies. Their fight was a lot of fun. Naruto's power had been tuned to match Kisame's. But like everything else, some people get tired of it. When the moon rose above the horizon, it meant that it was in charge of everything. The fight stopped being heard. A beast called Yokazi ruled Kisame. It was affected by the power of the moon in its place. There is a Yubanana Basaka Henken, which means bestial berserker transformation, or just beast mode. It didn't matter how it sounded. Naruto didn't turn into a werewolf. He just became more animal-like and had a wild personality. When the animal was let out of its cage, the odds were in Naruto's favor. The person who held the Sharingan easily and quickly beat Kisame. The Shark Man would not be alive if his loyal sword Samahata hadn't healed him and kept him alive. Kisame agreed to help Naruto with his plan to create an illusion that would destroy all evil, so Ryu left a scroll for her. One of the Uchiha survivors who hired Kisame in the past was named Obito, who tricked the Yondaime Mizukage into getting rid of the Keki Genkai in Kirigakure. Obito talked to Naruto and even asked him to help him with his plan. But Naruto said no because Obito's dreams were different from his own and he was carrying a name that was important to Naruto. So, in 5 months, the two people who wielded Sharingans would fight to the death in a valley south of the Fire Temple, which was where ninja monks were trained. The valley was flat, perfect, and big because Naruto thought the battle would be as big as the one between Hashirama and Madara. However, Naruto didn't know what he was going to do from then until now. He was now meditating on a big rock while trying to do something very hard. Taking charge of the Yubanana Basaka Henken, or Beast Mode. All of the things that made the Beast Mode unique were easy to spot. His ears were erect and his teeth were bared and fanged out. His hair was so wild and crazy that it broke through the bandages on his ponytail. His pupils shrunk and the white part of his eyes turned black. A scar-like pattern that looked like a X appeared between his eyes and ended at his cheekbones and hairline. He was trying to focus by going against the urge to attack anything that made noise with his eyes closed. Behind a tree, Zetsu was hiding. He really needed to talk to Naruto about his partner with blue hair and a Sharkman, as well as Sasori's help. He was interested in Naruto's plans with the 5 great shinobi nations and how they could help the Eye of the Moon plan. But right now, the blonde could attack the plant man with just the slightest action. It was easy to keep your emotions in check. It was a whole different thing to control your instincts. So far, Naruto has only been able to direct it and not control it. Well, just barely, because the way Kisame was left behind made us doubt. And even then, it took a lot of mental strength and willpower to direct it. Zetsu chose to be safe and moved slowly toward Naruto. He could get away with only one arm missing if he was careful. As an aggressive animal can't be predicted, it would be like trying to go east and west at the same time. Because of this, it was impossible to know what Naruto would do to the plant man. He got out from behind the tree and planned every move he would make to get to the blonde. His eyes fell on the man, who was sitting in lotus on a tall rock in a small clearing. The blonde couldn't use shadow clones to get even better at controlling beast mode because the more clones he made, the harder it was for them to focus on controlling their instincts. The white half looked like it was sweating because it was so nervous about what it was going to do. Both the black half and the white half were scared to face the beast's mouth. For what seemed like hours of pain, The plant man stood in front of Naruto, who was too focused on his current form to notice him. As not to scare the animal in front of him, Zetsu made sure he was quiet. The white half whispered, "N. Naruto." Right away, Naruto's eyes opened, and his look cut through Zetsu like a sword. Sharingan Zetsu didn't see Sharingan. Instead, he saw orange or amber eyes with slits that looked right into him. Zetsu wasn't sure if Naruto's eyes were that color before the transplant or if it was because of beast mode. Right now, Zetsu could feel a circle of death around him. I could feel and suffocated in it. Naruto's personal aura was what it was, not killing intent. It's likely that any other man would die of fear. W. We need to talk about O. R. Zetsu began, but Naruto cut him off with a low growl. I mean your plan. We need to talk about what our next move should be, he started, but was cut off by the blonde snarl as he used his Sharingan. Zetsu's plan wasn't working out as planned. Naruto would have to leave beast mode soon, though, because the moon was going down. Well, I believe that we should inform Konan of your plans and what you're up to. As the plant man approached, Madara's chosen heir stood up and clenched his right hand into a fist. He was ready to attack. Zetsu swayed a little from the movement and got ready to run away from the attack that was coming. It was White Zetsu who asked, "N. Naruto, we can talk about this. Right?" Quickly getting back to normal and trying to get the beast out of his body. One thing Naruto could control about the transformation was when it would end and he would fall back to normal. A big problem came up, though, when the mode was used. The stress that the mode put on the body and mind made the person who used it very tired. The blonde was out of breath. Another day, and still not much progress had been made with the beast mode, even though he had full control over it. Seeing that Naruto wasn't going to kill him right now made Zetsu feel better. "What is it, Zetsu?" Naruto coughed as he jumped off the big rock and tried to steady himself by putting his face in the palms of his hands. It felt like he was waking up. "We forgot to inform Konan about your extended absence." Talked to Zetsu. It didn't bother Naruto. He planned to meet Konan later because he had some things to talk to her about. He also asked the Mizukage if there was anything he needed from him. It seemed odd to him that she really wanted something from him. He had no idea what she wanted. He took his Akatsuki out of the seal on his left wrist and threw it over his body over his black cloak. "Go and wait for Nagato's are my orders. I need to go back to the graveyard on the mountain to get some things, and then I'll leave for the land of water," Naruto said. With that, he turned into a cloud of bats and sent them to Naruto's main base. Zetsu muttered as he watched Naruto's bat cloud fly through the sky. Damn, he's still impatient. And we were supposed to talk about our plans for the future. Tsunade Senju was doing her job as the Hokage while sitting at her desk. How she wished she could go drinking or gambling right now to get away from her advisors and Shizune. It was a strange message she got the day before. There's something about a nobody. Something was very strange going on right now. Tensions were rising in the village, and fear was spreading among both villagers and shinobi. At that moment, they were getting ready for the next attack or break. It was easy for her to hide Shino's death and the Dancing Phantom events, but she couldn't do it for long because the other ninja would get suspicious. She might want to talk to Jiraiya about what she needs to do. She would rather ask him for help than Homura, Kaharu, or Danzo. But she realized that everything began when Yokaze appeared. She knew something was going on, but she couldn't see what it was because lies were covering up the truth. She began to connect everything that had happened to what happened with Yokaze. It all made sense, but it didn't. Yokaze seems to be behind everything, even though he didn't do anything. Everything was falling into place like chess pieces and dominoes. She had to find out what happened next. A knock came from behind her. When she turned around in her chair, she saw a crow with a scroll tied to its back pecking at her window to get her attention. The crow was sitting on her desk, so she opened the window. She took the scroll off the crow and watched as it flew out the same window and somewhere else. In a certain place. When she took the scroll apart, there was a message written on the paper. The salamander's fire is most powerful when its pale angel commands it with its will and a rough command. It is always seeking the light of a higher being, so beware of its maw, for it has no power over anything and wants power over everything. What the hell? A big snake? Angel of the Pale? I don't understand this message, Suad thought. It was like trying to find your way out of a maze trying to figure it out. Suad yelled, "Anbu!" And 2 Anbu units appeared out of nowhere and knelt in front of her desk. "Get me Shikamaru Nara." I'm perfectly aware that he was suspended from active shinobi duty, but this requires his attention and ES expertise. The Anbu gave their cage a nod and then went to get the Nara air. Tsunade rubbed her angry temples together. Things were going in a circle towards something. She had a feeling that a lot of people would be held accountable. Hello, Hoshigaki. Was really hurt. Following his loss to Ryu, the blonde left behind a scroll that told Kisame what he should do next. The Sharkman was lying in bed at the small inn where he and Itachi were scheduled to stay. What used to be Kiri Nin hurt all over. Something in his body hurt every time he moved. Without Samahada's reassurance and help, Kisame would not have been able to make it back to the inn. Kisame was told by the dragon to stay Obito's agent until the Uchiha died in 5 months. Kisame was working for both sides at this point. Getting work for Obito and Ryu. Itachi walked in at that very moment and saw Kisame writhing in pain. What happened? Kisame asked with a smirk, amused to see himself in such a mess. Kisame said in a deadpan voice, "I fell down a staircase." Who moaned in pain? At that time, it was hard to do anything, even talk. Itachi said, "Sure you did." Itachi said, "Leader. Sama has given us a new mission." Kisame moaned again, but this time she was mad. He didn't want to go on a mission. "But the state you're in means we won't be going anywhere for a while. It's best if you recuperate from falling down the stairs." With a grunt, Kisame knew that Itachi would be watching him while he slept. Could things get worse for him? In a forest, huge groups of bats were moving toward an old cemetery that had become the home of a powerful person. The bats got through the trees and beelined straight for a ribcage that was 3 times the size of a man's. It looked like a kamikaze attack was going on between the bats, and a shape could be seen in the fur. The last 2 bats hit each other, the room filled with a black mist, and a dark figure emerged from it and walked gracefully toward a certain room. The base's interior was made up of stone hallways and dull sights. There aren't many braziers in the hallways, and it would be easy to get lost if you didn't know your way around. Naruto strolled through the halls of his home base. It had everything a person could want in life. Food, rest, a library, a medical facility, and weapons. It had everything. Naruto was going to a certain room in the command center, though. A small room where useful things and things with a lot of moral and financial value were kept. When Naruto opened the door to the room, he saw that it was full of boxes and shelves with boxes on them. There were 2 shelves directly to his left and right. The ones on the left had memories of Madara, and the ones on the right had memories of Naruto. After going through Madara and Naruto's things, Zetsu was able to tell them apart. It wasn't hard because the 2 men didn't have much and the boxes in the room were ready to be filled with things. He went to his shelf and saw 2 small wooden boxes sitting on top of it. When he opened one of the boxes, his Akatsuki ring with the kanji for sky or void written on it came out. He put the ring on his right index finger. He couldn't remember when he last had the ring, but he had to wear it because he was going back to his Akatsuki duties. He looked at the other box and took it out. Inside, there was a necklace. There was a green gem on the necklace and 2 other things on the band. This gem was very important to Naruto's mask before he died. He remembered that Hashirama Senju's chakra was stored in it. From what he had heard, it was worth a mountain of money. In its proper place, he put the necklace around his neck and left the room. And then he left, but not before putting away some money and gems that he had stolen from the Maeda family because they were so kind as to leave them lying around in their manor. Naruto might use the money he stole for something important, you never know. Besides that, he carried a large sum of cash with him just in case. The blonde saw Zetsu appear out of the ground right as Naruto was about to leave. "Konan has informed me that the Mizukage has 2 missions for the both of you." Spoke to Zetsu. Naruto just stared at Zetsu. Of course, the auburn-haired Kage would give him more missions. He was getting more and more the impression that she was trying to get him to like her. Even though he thought she wanted the Sharingan because she let him get her pregnant. If luck was that good to him, he wasn't sure if he could give the Sharingan to any children he might have in the future. He wasn't a Uchiha. Madara gave him the Sharingan through a blood transfusion. However, his body was able to accept it without any problems because he was descended from the Uzumaki, who were related to the Senju. Naruto said that was just his superstition getting the best of him. People couldn't get close to him. He wasn't excited about the idea of friends, and he also didn't trust people because the villagers beat him up while he was wearing his mask. Besides that, he didn't want anyone to get close to him because he thought that getting close to someone emotionally would make you weak and vulnerable. He discovered that the hard way. Deep down, though, he was scared at the thought of being hurt by someone in a way other than his body. In terms of physical strength, he was able to heal from most wounds and injuries. He tried, but his mind and emotions just couldn't handle it. The villagers' verbal abuse was terrible, but it was even worse when the Sandaime Hokage, who he thought of as family, kept the reason why everyone hated him a secret. This hurt even more because he knew the reason, but it would have been easier to tell him in a few words. Instead, he had to suffer the pain of ignorance as the villagers hurt him with words without knowing why. He chose to stop thinking about the past for now. Folks in the village could have hurt Naruto's face even if they only hurt his mask, because the mask and his real self were the same thing. Do harm to both. It wasn't hard to figure out. Get off of me, Zetsu. Go do something that doesn't take up my time, Naruto told them. White Zetsu was angry because of what he said, but Black Zetsu didn't care. Could things get worse for him? It made Shikamaru Nara both happy and mad. He was glad that he wasn't responsible for anything as a shinobi because now he could watch clouds, take naps, and generally be lazy. When his mother found out he was suspended, she yelled so loudly that she almost broke an artery. Shikamaru and his father were almost deaf from all the noise. Hikaru was even more mean when she hit him over the head with a frying pan. The heir to Nara didn't understand why his father would marry a woman so cruel. Shikamaru thought she was the most annoying person in the world. He spent the day being lazy and sleeping in bed. When he woke up, an Anbu member was standing at the foot of his bed and watching him through their masks, which had deep black holes in them. It was almost like a statue was put up in Shikamaru's room, and they looked at you everywhere. Shikamaru didn't freak out and yell, so he went back to sleep while the Anbu watched him. Shikamaru didn't get out of bed again until noon. The Anbu told him that the Hokage had called for him. The Nara scratched his head. He wasn't supposed to be a shinobi, right? Let's spend some time with Shikamaru and Suad in her office while Nara reads the message from the crow that Tsunade got. Shikamaru had no idea what to do. A big snake? I don't mean to be rude, but what is this? Shikamaru asked. When Tsunade saw the smart shinobi, he sighed. When she got the message, she felt the same way. I understand how you feel right now, and that note isn't the first one to grace me, Tsunade said as she put her head in her hands. Unfortunately, I tore apart the other one believing it to be nothing but a joke. I need you to head over to the cryptanalysis department and to see if they can decrypt that message. Tell them it is a top priority. I know that he sounds like overkill, but I believe that this message has something to do with the Akatsuki. Tsunade spoke with authority. The samurai sighed. Great, I got more work. Just when I thought I could relax and watch the clouds, our Hokage gave me more work. Naruto didn't like the thought, troublesome. Moving slowly through Konoha, Shikamaru was on his way to the cryptanalysis division. He was reading the message the Hokage had gotten while he did that. As Shikamaru read over, the salamander's fire is most powerful when its pale angel instills its will and turbulent injunction. Forever chasing the light of a greater being, forever beware of the salamander's maw as it has power over nothing and seeks power above everything. Even though he was smart, he couldn't figure out what this paragraph meant. Someone very smart must have been able to think of this. He saw that the cryptanalysis building was set up like a library. They were ready for him, Tsunade had told him. Shikamaru walked into the building and went to a certain room where the decryption team would be waiting to help him. When he opened the doors, he saw two people waiting for him. A man with glasses, dark eyes, black hair pulled back into a ponytail, and a small goatee was there. He wore a white coat over an orange shirt and dark pants. The other was a girl with fair skin who wore glasses, but hers were tinted and covered up her eyes. A few blonde hairs stuck out from her head, and she wore her hair in a low ponytail. She wore a simple red dress with a white lab coat over it. Hokage. Sama informed me that you would handle the investigation into the mysterious note she received this morning, said the man working there. It didn't take Shikamaru long to figure out that this man was in charge of cryptanalysis. Yeah, she ordered me here to decipher the message. She also told me to relay any information you discover to me also, said Shikamaru. He gave the man the message and then sat down in a chair in the corner of the room to wait for them to figure out what it meant. There were a few hours that went by while they worked on the message. At that moment, Shikamaru was taking a nap on the chair in the corner of the room. He opened his eyes and saw Shiho, one of the cryptographers, looking at him. When Shikamaru got up, he asked, "Have you found anything legible in the message?" "Unfortunately, the message doesn't match with any of our codes and algorithms. Whoever wrote this must have been in a hurry, or they put a lot of thought and effort into it so no one else could decrypt it." Saying Shiho made Shikamaru sigh. "If we had the key, we might have been able to decipher the message." "A key?" Shikamaru asked the blonde girl, not sure what she was talking about. "Well, a key is a string of rules that govern the code and algorithms. If we don't have the key, it would be near impossible to decrypt it. However, this message doesn't seem to have a key, therefore it's just gibberish." "Well, too bad, then this whole thing was just a waste of time. I could have watched the clouds go by in the amount of time I spent here," moaned Shikamaru, who sighed. He was almost at the door, ready to leave, when Shikamaru said, "Thanks for your help. I'll go tell Tsunade-sama. You know, when I first read the message, the salamander almost had me believing that it was connected to Hanzo of the salamander," Shiho said quietly. Shikamaru stopped in his tracks and looked at Shiho with a look that claimed he knew what was going on. Shikamaru was shocked and said, "Say that again." "What, that the salamander in the message was somehow connected to Hanzo?" said Shiho once more. It was very out of character for Shikamaru to say, "Right now I feel like kissing you." The sentence made Shiho blush a lot. And she spoke in a strange language that no one could understand. "However, I just figured out how we can crack this code." That piece of paper sitting alone on a small table caught the attention of all three people in the room. "I believe that every noun in this message is related to something different but yet similar," said Shikamaru. "Shiho, when you said that the salamander, the first you thought of was Hanzo, right?" "Yes," Shiho said, "correct." When they read about the salamander, Shikamaru said, "We immediately thought of the leader of Omegacure because it was both similar and different. The message isn't about Hanzo, but about something else that is related to a salamander in some way." The two cryptographers were amazed at how quickly and well they had thought this through. Shikamaru asked Shiho, "Can you tell me some salamander stories?" Sure. Salamanders were believed to be born of fire and could sleep and live in flames. There have also been rumors that it can also breathe fire, and because of that a salamander is closely linked to that of dragons, another creature that has been symbolized with fire. Shiho shared what she knew about the amphibian. "That's what I wanted to hear. So the salamander is really a dragon." Shikamaru took out a pencil, twirled it around in his fingers, and crossed out salamander and wrote dragon in its place. So it seems that all the nouns actually do refer to something else. The next noun is fire, so it's referring to something else. Well, fire can be interpreted in different ways, but the salamander, which is now a dragon, only had one meaning. We need to figure out what the word really means. Shiho turned away from the able and grabbed a book from one of the shelves around the room. Fire, fire, here we go, fire and its symbolism. It says here that fire symbolizes energy, passion, action, creativity, authority and power, and among other things, especially sexuality. Shiho flirted, but no one heard her. "I believe the word fire refers to the word power," said the chief cryptographer. Shikamaru crossed out fire and wrote power. "It seems likely, but we should keep an open mind. It could still mean anything," he said. "Not only that, but the message makes more sense now. Let's move on to the next word, which is angel." Everyone in the room was shocked. What could the word angel mean? It obviously is referring to some sort of deity. A pale angel. Angels are usually described as messengers, following the order of a greater divine being, said Shiho. Chasing the light of a greater being. To see if any of them fit the purpose of the pale angel, Shiho pulled out another book. This one was about gods and deities. She turned page after page and said, "If we use the information we have now, I think we can figure out what the pale angel is. Let's see, gods of beauty and fertility, longevity." Shikamaru told them, "Don't look at gods. Look at things that are related to gods. Okay, so there's the ocean, the mountains, the sky, some people, the sun, the moon," but she stopped talking when she saw Shikamaru cross out angel and write moon. It wasn't hard to figure out that the greater being was the sun. He seemed to have figured out the angel part. Shiho was about to say something, but Shikamaru cut her off. Shikamaru just said, "Read about the moon." Well, the moon has been known in legend to cause lunacy, insanity and savage, animalistic personalities. Because of that, many people in various religions have hailed the moon as a god or goddess. Though whether this is true or not has yet to be proven, but the common belief that the moon influences a person's mood and behavior stemmed from the idea that the moon made one simply crazy. Spoke Shiho as she spoke about the moon and adding in some of her own words. Shikamaru showed that he was right by nodding his head at her. The only noun left is ma. But I don't think it's referring to another noun like the others. Talked about Shiho. Shikamaru asked, can you explain? He didn't know what to say or was too lazy to make words. Well, if I was the one writing this message, I would refer to the ma as a certain motive rather than another noun. But yet it also could refer to the dragon's fire, as like I said earlier, fire can also mean a number of things, not just the force of nature. There was one meaning that related to the word ma. Consumption. As fire is known to consume everything it touches, so this must mean that the ma is linked to fire. According to Shiho, the head cryptographer said, maybe the ma is the reason to seek and use power. That's the most likely explanation. Shikamaru picked up the note and left the room, saying, you might be right. Listen, hold on to the note. I'll go tell Tsunade Sama about its message, no matter how annoying it was. Shikamaru said over his shoulder, and if I need anything, I'll be right back. This made Shiho blush because she had just set her sights on the Nara air. After taking some time to think about what the note said, Tsunade said, I see. Was that all the information you could get from the message? Yeah, it took the cryptographers hours, but they couldn't get anything from it, but you know how it is, the simplest things just happen to be the most troublesome to figure out. Said Shikamaru. The message clearly hints at a warning to be wary of a certain person, Tsunade said. Shikamaru agreed. Shikamaru crossed his arms and said, I don't think it's that hard to figure out who the warning is for. I wrote that in the bingo book for him, Tsunade said. She bit her nail in anger because she couldn't stand the thought of that person. But still, he's been causing a lot of trouble, ever since he popped out of nowhere. The message also hinted at his motives, but it didn't reveal much, and we don't have a lot of information to put together what we believe he's up to. Shikamaru went on. Suad said, Jiraiya told me that he joined the Akatsuki. This made Shikamaru raise an eyebrow. If so, then trying to find him right now will be impossible, unless somehow we run into him and whoever his partner is by accident. Shikamaru said as he left the room, if that's all there is to it, I'll be on my way. Remember, I'm still on suspension. Tsunade couldn't stop thinking about the same things on almost everything. It's possible that this was her karma for breaking a promise to someone very close to her. She felt bad about letting that person down. If that was the case, how could she face that person again when it was her turn to leave? When the Hokage sighed, she could feel the weight of her biggest mistake hanging over her like a shroud. She could only pray that God would forgive her. This man in Kirigakure was moving through the town like water while wearing a black cloak with red clouds on top of it. His hood was up, so most of his face couldn't be seen. The man was looking for his beautiful, blue-haired partner. But since he was in a shinobi village, all he had to do was feel her chakras somewhere. He found her. While he was walking through the streets of Hidden Mist Village, he saw people going about their daily lives as if nothing were wrong. He was walking by the buildings when he caught sight of something out of the corner of his eye. It was far away, but he could still make it out. The small park was mostly for kids because it had a play area with swings, monkey bars, and seesaws. The blonde person who held the Sharingan watched all the kids play with their friends and other games. Some people would think that seeing them smile was the purest thing in the world. Naruto thought back to when he was a little kid. Children were told to stay away from him because they were afraid of the Kyuubi and didn't trust their leader. He had a really hard time growing up. Other people didn't even want to talk to him, let alone look at him. He could remember how lonely he felt most of those days when the other kids were playing outside. He could remember being envious of those other kids as he sat on a swing set and watched them play. It was great that he wanted to be with them at that time. But what was even worse was that his parents and teachers told their kids to pick on him and put him down. Of course, since they were kids and Sandia's law wasn't in place yet, they didn't know that he was the village's biggest mistake. What the Jinchuriki? In order to get their parents' approval, the students at the academy would pick on him and hurt him physically and emotionally, which made their parents happy. He remembered everything. There were times when he helped other kids by protecting them from bullies. The parents would spit on his kindness and selflessness, as if they thought he didn't have any of those traits, or that he couldn't have them. At the time, he asked himself, what was I trying to achieve? Strength, honor, fear, happiness. Not any of those. That he was a person with emotions and feelings full of dreams and goals, not just a nobody who didn't matter to anyone else. He wished that people would love him as much as they loved him. He wanted to share his love with someone who deserved it and maybe come into the world with a new, pure life that he made with someone he loved. But that wasn't going to happen, and he couldn't see that one coming. The kids playing on the swing set while their parents watched over them with love and care. It wasn't his time as a child, though, that the kids thought was interesting. But he missed something. Mentally, he was an adult even though he was in his teens. He had seen and done things that he didn't think his old Konoha friends had seen. He really wanted to be one of those parents who watched their kids. He longed to have a child. His main goal was to make life and love that life more than anything else. He wished to be loved. A child looks up to and worships their parents. His main goal was to give his child everything he never had, but he didn't want to spoil the child either. Now, though, he didn't think it was possible to have a child with someone else. In that case, he would want the other parent of his child to be even better than him in order to deserve his love. He didn't care about anyone else. He looked away from the parents and children and walked through the village with a face that didn't show any emotion. He was always in pain on the inside. She was in her hotel room, sitting in a chair and looking out a window. The mist enveloped the village, but she could still see its round towers. It was better than when it rained in a megacure. Rai hadn't talked to her in a while. He was meant to be back the day before, but he hadn't been seen yet. It was the Mizukage who asked him where he was. But Konan lied and said he was exploring the land of water, which the beautiful Kage agreed to. Konan was scared, but she didn't know why. But she hoped Rai would come back. She has been getting used to life since she became his partner. She is always on the go, going to new places and on missions with Ryu. The shinobi knew that killing someone was part of their job, even though she didn't like doing it. Even though she would never say it, it was kind of. It was fun to run with Ryu. It made her think of her time with Yahiko. She would do anything to remember those times again. When she heard her door open, she got her charka ready in case someone was trying to break in. After what happened when Rai was taken, she became even more careful. The man took off his hood to show her his golden hair, which was the person she wanted to see most. Konan. Naruto deadpanned, and Konan felt calmer around him. Have you been busy? No, the missions the Mizukage assigns me have been relatively simple. Replied Konan. As Naruto and Konan walked into his room together, Naruto said, good. She's been curious about your recent whereabouts, I too have been curious. Talked to Konan. Ryu did not answer her. I was to have Zetsu contact you and say that I would be delayed in my arrival to Kirigakure. But the fool forgot to tell you, so here I am now. Rai said on his bed. Konan said, I see. Naruto caught Konan's attention by saying, also, I wanted to talk to you about something, 2 things, it seems. Naruto asked Konan, how would you react if I told you I could make you stronger? Konan raised an eyebrow. But how would he make her stronger? While still being cautious, Konan whispered, depends on what you have in mind. There was a clan of shinobi that I faced a few times during the time of the Warring States. Their bodies and chakra were even stronger than the Senjus, Naruto said as he changed into the character, Madara. This clan of shinobi was the Uzumaki clan. They were distant blood relatives of the Senju. They had amazingly powerful life force and strong, resilient chakra, and because of their life force, the Uzumaki could live twice as long as the average human in fact, many Uzumaki during the Warring States had a far longer life expectancy than any other shinobi, coupled with their prominent healing factor where they could survive fatal wounds and keep on fighting for 3 days. I've heard of the Uzumaki clan, but I did not know much about them. Told Konan. But what does this clan have to do with making me stronger? I wish to give the clan's powers and abilities to you, by either infusing your cells with Uzumaki cells or transfusing blood. Said the blonde. Konan didn't know what to do. But she did want to help Ryu with his plan, and getting stronger would do that. But the way he planned to do it was a lot like human testing. What advantages would I have? Konan asked. First of all, your chakra will skyrocket, becoming larger and stronger. 2. Your life force and healing factor will increase dramatically, although your regenerative powers would not be on par with my own, but it can still rival it, where you can recover from the wounds in hours and broken bones in days. And don't worry about this affecting any of your possibly future children, they won't inherit the same powers you would have. Explained Naruto, and to Konan she was tempted to use it. Konan let out a heavy sigh. She knew the answer already. Konan said in a low voice, I will let myself be experimented on, but she was still not sure if she wanted to do it. When Ryu Konan looked up at him, he said, you misunderstand. With a set, sure look on his face, he said, I'm not doing any experiments on you. It's just a simple medical procedure. It will be quick and painless. I don't want to hurt you. The woman with blue hair was shocked because, based on who she was talking to, she thought he might want to do some kind of experiment on her. But all he wanted was for her to go through a medical procedure that could be done in a hospital. The fact that he said he didn't want to hurt her didn't make her smile any less. She might not have been right about Ryu Yokazi. He might have a human side after all. Naruto said, I also need you to hold on to something for me. Konan narrowed her eyes and asked, and? That would be? He replied, I'll tell you later. It's not important right now. Whose eyes were getting heavy from using the beast mode for so long. We should get some rest, night will be approaching soon, we will attend to the missions the Mizukage has for us tomorrow, and then we will perform the procedure for your Uzumaki abilities and add on to the items I need you to hold on to. Said Naruto, and Konan nodded. The missions tomorrow are the last ones the Mizukage has for us. After that, they'll tell us to leave the land of water and go to other lands to do work they're willing to do, Konan whispered as she took off her Akatsuki cloak and went to her hotel room. Naruto also took off his black cloak and his Akatsuki cloak on top of it. He ran his hand through his wild hair and thought about whether he should get a new haircut to spite the man who had caused him so much pain. He didn't like how that man looked. He thought that every time he looked in the mirror, the Yondaimi's face would show up. He hated that man so much. He was interested in how the Yondaime would react if they found out that his child, his scion, was working as an apprentice for Konoha's first and worst traitor. Not giving it any thought, Naruto pulled the covers over his bed over him and closed his eyes as he fell asleep without any dreams. In Iwagakure, a place with tall mountains and rock and stone spires, the Tsuchikage was in his office giving a very important shinobi a job to do. Someone who stayed true to him throughout his time is Tsuchikage. The man before him had been in the Third Shinobi World War and fought the Yondaime Hokage, who was a jonin at the time. He barely made it through. Someone who was naturally talented even before she joined Iwa's school. Noki told her, you know what your mission is. I cannot assign Kitsuchi to this as he is far too important given the fact that he's the jonin commander. You are perfect for this as not many can see you coming, and if they do they won't be getting back up. The person with the typical surfboard accent said, yeah. All I know is that I'm killing someone. There were better things for him to do than listen to an old man. The fact that he was loyal did not mean that he was not rude. Your target is Ryu Yokazi, who has presented himself as a major threat to this village. You are to eliminate him and take his Sharingan from his corpse. Continued Onoki. Yokazi, huh? Say, didn't he kill a bunch of our guys some time ago? Said the person. When this happened, Noki's eyes went wide with shock, and his jaw hit the floor. How do you know about? Wait. Have you been eavesdropping again? Shouted Onoki. In a way that seemed defensive, the person raised his arms. Sorry old coot, but you know I just can't help it. I love listening in on the dirt people say around the village, as if I can't stop eavesdropping, it's my instincts, ya know. The person continued. But how do you know about our missing shinobi? Noki, who was working on controlling his anger, asked. The person said, who knows? As if you're going to figure it out. Oki was furious in his chair. This person was really annoying him. You might want to cool down old coot, say shouldn't you be complaining about your hip and back pains right about now? Asked the person. What the back? Aw. My back. Yelled Noki as he took out his anger on his back. The other person in the room laughed at the scene. Stop chuckling, you idiot. You're the village's strongest shinobi, only Kitsuchi can rival you. Kitsuchi and you can defeat me, as if, you're too old and Kitsuchi is a stickler for the rules. Said the person. Stop messing around, Sogeki. Noki yelled. As Sogeki walked up to his cage's desk, he said, "Relax, relax, you shouldn't give me such an angry look. It really shows how old you are." The world now knew about Sogeki. Sogeki wore his black hair back in a ponytail that reached mid-back. His eyes were golden, and his eyebrows were raised. He had an eye patch over his right eye and a long, jagged scar that went from his left cheek to just below his left eye. His Iwagakure flak jacket was torn, and the ends of a red scarf stuck out behind his neck. He wore a long purple coat with two tails that had no sleeves and a low collar. He had two black gloves on, but the thumb and index fingers were missing from one pair. He also had mesh armor for his arms. He wore simple brown ninja sandals and pants. He thought he was nice and manly, but that hasn't been proven yet. "Hey, you know what? You should retire and let me wear that funny hat of yours," Sogeki said with a cocky grin. "I still have life in these bones of mine. But still kill Ryu Yokaze, and if you can retrieve the Sharingan, do so. Although Yokaze may give you some trouble," spoke Onoki. As Sogeki left the office, he said, as if, "Yokaze is as good as dead. I never miss my mark." As Sogeki left the room, he said, "I'm going to pick up my two beauties. Yokaze won't even have time to blink before he's dead. I hope so, but I wonder if Usogeki Bareru won't die at Yokaze's hand," said Onoki. "Let's go back to the guy we're rooting for even though he's doing bad things." Naruto could feel such a rising feeling of waking up. The room was mostly dark because the blinds blocked out the sun's eternal light, but some stray beams were making their way through and into Naruto's eyes. The blonde moved in pain, but for some reason she didn't make any facial expressions. He moved his body to get away from the light. It didn't work for him when he tried, though. Everything he tried worked the same way the first time. Naruto opened his Sharingan eyes and looked around to see where he was. He couldn't see much because the room was dark. He thought about the Byakugan a lot of the time. Naruto seemed to have been captured again, and he had to praise the person who did it. Taking him while he was asleep was a brilliant move, since his seal on the back of his neck would only go off when he felt something he wasn't supposed to feel, which was not the case when he was sleeping. He looked all over the area for the thing that was making it hard for him to move. And they had his hands and feet tied to a bed, which had its covers over his sacred private parts. But there was something wrong with these cuffs. Their fur was pink. Naruto had a thought. Naruto didn't try to get away. He was just waiting for his captors. The old badger would be killed by Dan's, again if it was him. The blonde was making guesses about what his captors might do to him. A lot likely torture him. For fun, scar his body, or beat him up to get information out of him. The person who had the Sharingan didn't care. His mind was already broken, so no amount of torture would work on him. He was like a broken toy. The person who took him was well trained, though. In any case, he slept a lot. He could just barely make out a door in front of him because the room wasn't well lit. He sighed as unhappy. His joke must have been that this was a real thing. Some Kiri shinobi were trying to make him look bad. He didn't care, and they won't care either. He could hear the door in front of him open and close. There was no worry, fear, or nervousness in his body. He didn't care. But the person who walked through wasn't someone he would normally see. The Godem Mizukage, Mei Terumi, walks through the door wearing sexy underwear. "Hello there, Ryu. Kun," Mei said while sexually biting her lip. After that, Naruto bit his own lip, but this time for a different reason. He bit his lip so hard that blood came out to break the genjutsu he was using. There was no problem, though. He wasn't doing any genjutsu. There are many men in the world who would love to be in his shoes. "Ryu. Kun, I've wanted you for a while now," Mei said in a low voice. For his amusement, she started to strut toward the blonde who couldn't move and swayed her hips. "Mizukage. Sama, could you please explain to me why I'm handcuffed to a bed? And why I'm naked underneath?" asked the blonde. His noise was stopped when Mei put her finger to his lips. "Please Ryu. Kun, call me Mei-chan. And well, you kept ignoring or not understanding my playful attempts to have my way with you. So I decided to take matters into my own hands for the next few hours, depends on how long it takes to please me. You're mine and mine only," Mei said in Naruto's ear. She quickly began nibbling on his earlobe, which made the blonde moan. Lemon alert. Don't read it if you don't want to, and don't be mean to me if it's bad. When Mei bit his lobe, he smiled. She really did want Rai, all along. She wanted to touch his body and rub her nails against his abs. They got stuck in his back because they were so happy from when two people became one. She felt envious of Conan's perfect carvings of the opposite sex, but she didn't tell anyone. She was interested in knowing if Ryu and Konan were dating or not. It didn't matter, though, because blonde hair really turned her on. Moving on to some that are just as soft but taste better. Mei tried to kiss Naruto on the lips. His warm breath was on her face, and his red eyes were right through hers. She was interested in what color his eyes were outside of red. It didn't matter at the time, though. He felt her soft, pink lips against his, almost chaste but with a hint of lust. The kiss was soft and gentle, and she could tell he wasn't trying to avoid her or look away. But Mei wanted more. Like an animal, she had strong instincts that told her she needed more. She stuck her tongue into his mouth and felt every crack. All the while, she moved around on top of him so she could straddle him when it was time for the main course. Mei noticed that his mouth tasted great, like pork. Soon, she ran into resistance in the form of a fleshy limb wrestling with hers. When Ryu started to fight her in their tongue war, she smiled happily. Naruto could feel her full, perky breasts on his middle because her chest was pressed against his chest tightly. With her arms wrapped around the blonde's head, Mei began to untie the tight ponytail from its ties. She could feel herself getting more aroused every second. She ran her fingers through the hair that was now loose. It felt soft and silky, which wasn't what she would expect from someone with curly hair. She stopped kissing him and began rough kissing the soft skin on his neck, which made him moan with pleasure. She gave him a strong kiss on the part of his neck right under his chin where she knew it would leave a hickey. She heard the chains clattering and was glad to see him twitch with pleasure. She smiled with pride. After that, she kissed him all the way down to his stomach. She stopped, though, and straightened up. She felt like she had too much on. Mei began to take off the black underwear that was covering her body. She moved away from our blonde auntie. Hiro and slowly began taking off her underwear, which made the person holding the Sharingan laugh. There was also an extra long piece under the bed covers that she saw. The sneaky redhead would keep making fun of the blonde for a little while longer. That waiting had to be killing her prisoner, she thought with a smile. She took off her bra, letting her easily cup breasts pop out. They moved around a bit, making Naruto's length move a bit. Naruto was trying to stay calm his whole body. He had a lot of control over his feelings, but his primal instincts were very strong right now, telling him to fuck the beauty like a crazy wolf. The Mizukage put her hands on her underwear and turned around to face Naruto with her back to him. And she started showing off her fat body. Because she was so wet, her underwear got completely soaked. She only wanted him to take her now. But her mom always told her, if you wait, good things will happen. Mei said, now for the appetizer. As she walked up to the man who was bound. She threw away the covers that were covering the man in front of her private parts. And what she saw shocked her, a 9. And a half-inch cock sticking out like a pole. She thought he would be big, but wow. When Mei woke up, she grabbed Naruto's hard member with her soft hand, which made the blonde moan a little. She smiled at how far she had come. Ryu, who was stiff, calm, and shy, putty in her hands. Before she hit the rest of the pole with her mouth, she licked the bottom of Naruto's penis. Naruto groaned with pleasure as she worked on his mouth. Her mouth was dangerous in bed and in battle as well. The woman with the auburn hair was making fun of him, and he couldn't stand it. If he wasn't in chains with frilly cuffs that made him look like a sexual offender. He was going to hit that behind. Hard. While she was still giving him a blow. Job. Mei kept licking the bottom of the shaft for the man who was chained up like a prisoner. In a whisper, Naruto let go and said, I'm close. Mei didn't seem to mind and kept bobbing her head while holding Ryu's dick. I'm coming.
Naruto yelled as he squirted Mei with rope after rope of cum.
She happily drank it all up. Mei's mouth left Naruto's cock with a loud pop. Mei said, that was delicious. Naruto didn't pay attention to her because he was too excited to think straight. When he looked up, he saw Mei getting ready to stab herself in the cock, which was still rock hard. She jumped on Naruto's cock and said, "Time for the main course." The feeling made her eyes widen and Naruto gasp. For Naruto, this was the first time, but not for Mei. Besides Konan, he didn't spend much time with women, more than a minute at a time, but Mei was an exception. That being said, Naruto thought it felt great. There was something missing, like a hole that had to be filled. He then watched as Mei jumped up and down on him like a pogo stick. When she felt Naruto's penis kiss her womb, her pleasure went through the roof. At first, she moved very slowly and painfully, but then her hips picked up speed, and she tried to keep in touch with her blonde prisoner with half closed eyes. Naruto had finally had enough of the cage's pokes at him. With his newfound strength, he broke free from his fluffy chains, grabbed Mei's firm but soft buttocks, and began to push himself into her snatch. There was only the sound of breathing, moans, grunts, and the slapping and squelching of skin touching skin. Mei yelled, "Yes, go faster." Naruto did what she said and sped up. Mei yelled, "Harder." He drove himself deeper into the woman because of this. When Mei felt too much pleasure, her eyes rolled back into her head. She had the best sex of her life. She had her own toy. She could feel her climax coming over her like a wave. She was almost there, just a little more. Naruto could feel her lower lips getting tighter around his cock as they milked him of his cum. Mei yelled, "I'm coming," as she went through an orgasm. Naruto also had an orgasm and sprayed her inner walls with white powder. After a few seconds, both goths were out of control during their own orgasms. Mei was quickly lying on her stomach with her behind high in the air. Naruto then started to fuck her behind like an animal. She was so happy that she screamed at the top of her lungs. With the few boyfriends she had over the years, she had only tried anal a few times. Primordial urges were hitting him hard, and Naruto was loving the strong desire to keep fucking the cage. He had lost his virginity, but he didn't care because he was set on having another anal with the Mizukage right now. He was being milked like a cow by Mei's ass, which turned out to be tighter than her pussy. He could feel himself getting free. "Ah yes, harder, faster," screamed Mei. She kept screaming until she almost hurt Naruto's ears, so he pushed her head into the pillow to block out her screams. He was really close now. Naruto moaned and shot Mei in the behind with cum shots. The white baby batter covered the walls of her anus. He looked down and saw that he and Mei both had a thin sheen of sweat on them. He was also very tired. Having sex had worn him out. Each person gave up because they were too tired. And slept for another hour or more. Lemon end. If it's bad, I'm sorry. If it's good, thank you.
It was noon, and the sun was shining like an emperor across the sky.
There was a woman with blue hair who was wondering where her powerful partner went. She woke up to find that his room was empty. Again, she looked around the hotel room to get a better idea of where he might be. However, there was no proof that he was at the hotel. She wouldn't do anything if he was caught again. She didn't need to worry because she had nothing. There was something stranger than anything she had ever seen or heard before. The rest of his clothes and his cloak were still in his room. Some people were interested in his samurai style armor, but she didn't think he had it with him. She was going to stay at the hotel until her partner came back. She did care about Ryu in a way that was like friendship, but it was a strange and far away kind of friendship. Still, she could see that her partner had scars on her, but they were emotional scars, not physical ones. She knew the reason he was so shy and quiet. He had every reason to be, because she had been like that ever since Yahiko died. But he didn't show any emotion. It was like he had put his feelings away and forgotten about them. She thought that maybe she could help him with his issues. It would be the least she could do since his plan had already helped her a lot. Even though she wasn't sure she could get rid of all the scars. To accept and forget the pain that other people had caused, she had to make him open up like a flower in full bloom. She felt that he wasn't going to tell her everything about himself so easily, so something like that had to be handled with care. She groaned. She was giving things too much thought. Plus, he was from the Uzumaki clan, so he was going to make her stronger, right? She had to wait first, though. For someone who did things very slowly. Naruto could feel himself waking up from his sleep without any dreams. He hadn't had a real dream or nightmare in weeks after his strange night terrors. He thought maybe there was something wrong with him. He did have a problem. In his mind, he was a mess. He faked his feelings to show how he thought people would react because he couldn't feel anything. When he asked Zetsu how good he was at acting like other people, the plant man just said he was fine. For a moment, he wondered if there was any way he could get back what he had lost. He didn't feel much empathy or regret because he didn't have any emotions. Madara praised this about him, but he wasn't sure about it. He wanted the Eye of the Moon plan to come true so that he could feel better. Naruto thought that was the only way he could get them back. That wouldn't happen for a while, though. He had to get away from Mei Terumi, the Godem Mizukage, the red-headed devil. He wasn't sure if she was being persistent or if there was something wrong with her. Not at all, because he had to get them out of the situation they were in. The redhead was lying on top of him, and their legs were tangled, making it hard for the blonde to move. As Naruto thought about something, he looked to his left and saw a pillow. To get away from the beast called the Mizukage, Naruto used the Kawarimi no Jutsu, body replacement technique, to switch places with the pillow. He also used contraception jutsu to keep her from getting pregnant, because he didn't want that to happen right now. He had to be careful not to wake her up, too. He was lucky that he didn't wake up the leader of Kirigakure. He didn't even have to give up a body part. This is where things got tricky. He is looking for his clothes. He looked for a while but couldn't find his clothes, not his cloak, gloves, or pants. At least he had to find his pants. He looked all over the room, though, but couldn't find his black clothes. He left the room and looked all over the Mizukage's house, but he couldn't find his clothes. Then it hit him. Mei took off all of his clothes before taking him away. It didn't make sense to tell anyone how the Mizukage was able to carry a naked man through a big village. Not having any other choice but to walk around Kirigakure naked, Naruto used one of his useful approaches to sneaking around. Mizuigakure no Jutsu, hiding with camouflage technique, was Naruto's words as his body vanished from view. In his invisible state, he quickly grabbed his stuff and ran out of the mansion. He ran across the village's roofs to get away from the people there and get his clothes back. To keep from making an air distortion that would let Shinobi know where he was, he made sure not to move too quickly. In just a few minutes, Naruto was getting close to the hotel room he shared with Konan. By quickly opening the door and looking at the outside of the hotel, Naruto was able to come out of hiding and be seen again. He felt better when he knew he could get away from Mei without being seen. He turned around, though, and saw Konan staring back at him with a red face. Naruto didn't understand what could have caused this. But when he thought about what he was wearing, he blushed too quickly. Kanan was just waiting for Ryu to come back, but she didn't expect him to be naked and chained around the ankles and wrists with fluffy handcuffs. She was shocked by how big he was. Was it by chance that he put a big sausage on his behind? As she kept examining Naruto's one-eyed snake, she could feel a small amount of blood come out of her nose. Naruto quickly spoke while pulling his cock behind his back. I see. Can explain. No, you can't explain. Your excuse would be too crazy to believe. Just get dressed, Konan told her as she ran into another room, holding her face in her soft hands and trying to forget the sexy images that were starting to form in her mind. It turns out that she did take some of Jiraiya's sexiness with her. After 10 minutes, Naruto put on his black cloak, gloves, pants, and boots again. The two members of Akatsuki did nothing but wait in their rooms for a reasonable amount of time. After some time, Naruto and Konan were both walking through Kirigakure with their Akatsuki cloaks on. Naruto and his beautiful partner each had their own. Quite a strange meet and greet. Konan kept raising an eyebrow as she thought about, well, I think you get the idea. Naruto, on the other hand, kept pulling on his hood to hide his face so no one could see how embarrassed he was about some things that had happened today. They were going to get their last task in the Land of Water today. After that, Nagato would give them other tasks to do. If Naruto said he wasn't excited to catch the Biju, especially the Kyuubi, he would be lying. He really wanted to fight the monster fox. It wasn't the Kyuubi's fault that people in the village were mean to him. He really couldn't be mad at the Kyuubi. In reality, he didn't want to fight any of the 9 Biju because they were too strong for him in their original form. When the Mizukage's tower came into view, it snapped him out of his thoughts. The thought that he would see Mei again made him slack his jaw. He felt scared at the thought. He didn't want to, but he was going to take the mission anyway. So he was now standing with Konan in front of the Mizukage, who was smiling happily at him. He had a guess as to why. It was a little annoying, though, that her eyes were always on him, and he could see the lust and desire she felt for him. Soon, he had to get away from this woman. I have a mission for the both of you that will take you out of the land of water and to the land of waves. I told Mei. Naruto worked hard not to show his surprise. He thought, the land of waves. He could remember his very first real job as a shinobi. He couldn't remember much about that girl with pink hair, Kakashi and Sasuke. That spot. It was one of the few places in the world where people acknowledged that he existed. People smiled and looked at him with eyes full of praise as he walked through those streets. It made him happy back then. It makes me happy to know that he thought he could change how people in his own village saw him. He thought that when Konoha heard about him, they would at least look at him. He was wrong, though. They instead said nice things about Sasuke, Kakashi, and Sakura. They were against what they believed because they didn't think a demon would save a country. They didn't pay attention to anything, like it wasn't there. It didn't matter then, and it won't matter now. I want you two to retrieve the Kabikirabocho decapitating carving knife. You see, I wish to rebuild the Kiri no Shinobi Katana Shishinen Shu, 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist, and it recently came to my attention that the blade is residing in the land of waves. Kiri only has one of the swords, Haramekure, twin sword, which is currently being wielded by Chojuro. Bringing back the blade could increase the current quality of power between my shinobi, as the swords are well sought after and many will attempt to gain advantages over others with the sword as motivation. Told Mei about her plans and mission details. She turned and left the room, saying, "We will go within the hour, Mizukage." Sama. Mei spoke in a seductive way, "Please, come back safely." Ryu-kun. This made Ryu feel cold all over. He also left the room quickly, eager to avoid the Mizukage. So, Konan and Ryu left the land of water to go to the land of waves and get a famous sword. But Naruto was curious. Would he see the people of the land of waves or? There are ghosts. Naruto changed into a bat, and Konan spread out her body into many paper butterflies. The place they were going was a land of ghosts and memories. Along the way to the land of waves, a cloud of bats and a swarm of paper butterflies flew through trees and other natural things. The bats stopped moving, though, near a rocky canyon, and began to attack each other. Soon, a misty shape began to take shape. It came out of the fog and landed gracefully on a canyon. He saw a woman with blue hair and an Akatsuki cloak when butterflies folded together next to him. Konan asked, "Why have we stopped?" He turned around to face her. "Like I told you back in Kirigakure, I need you to hold on to something for me." Naruto said this. The blonde told her, "Now open your mouth." Konan looked at him with wide eyes, confused and a little embarrassed. Konan looked at her partner with open eyes and asked, "What?" "I will be more polite this time, please open your mouth so I may put something in there," Naruto said with a neutral tone. As Konan watched the reaction, her eyes got narrowed as she tried to understand. A flash of pink color appeared on her face. "If you try to stick your rod into any part of my body, you'll find it missing the next time you look. And I will warn you this time and this time only. I am not an easy catch, remember?" Konan spoke in a scary demon voice. When she said that, Naruto raised an eyebrow in confusion. Then a flush of pink appeared on his face, showing that he understood what she meant. Apparently, the incident at the hotel has still not been forgotten. Naruto told him, "You misunderstand." He rolled up the sleeves of his cloak to show off his strong arm. He bit his arm hard enough to make blood come out. The blonde let the blood drip down his arm, covering his black glove with many trails of the red liquid. He did a few hand seals and then hit the ground with his bloody hand. He yelled, "Kachiyose no Jutsu, summoning technique." And a cloud of smoke could be seen rising up. When the smoke cleared, Konan saw what looked like a wolf. It had a white and light gray coat with dark gray spots around its eyes and body. But what really shocked Konan were its eyes. Because in her line of sight were a pair of blood red Sharingan eyes. Naruto got Konan's attention by saying, "I'm giving you this wolf. His name is Koinu, puppy, and as you can see his eyes is what makes him valuable." "Why would you give me a wolf? Even though he has the Sharingan, I don't see why I would be best to care for him," said Konan. "His name is Koinu, and I'm giving him to you as a sign of faith and trust." Koinu's eyes are unbelievably powerful, and if anyone were to get them, well, let's just say what would happen after would be disastrous, Naruto explained. Koini barked in response, which made Naruto scratch him behind the ear, which the wolf liked. I believe that you are the most suited to protect him since I can trust you. Konan's eyes got a little bigger. If Ryu left this wolf with her, it meant he trusted her, and she didn't want to break that trust. Not only that, if you are in danger, Koinu can assist you by utilizing the Sharingan's exclusive and unique techniques at any time. Naruto had to look out for those eyes. These were his eyes. The ones in his sockets used to belong to Madara before he had Izuna's transferred to him. The wolf's eyes used to be Naruto's ocean blue eyes. When Madara and Naruto learned about the Kamiyonino's powers, they took steps to make sure that the eyes didn't end up in each other's hands. The power they had was unimaginable, and the damage they caused was unimaginable. People said that Kamiyonino was the most powerful Mangekyo, with Susanoo coming in second. Naruto took Madara's eyes from its body after it died. You could fight a war and win with those eyes. The Kamiyonino could do other jutsu besides the Kumonju no Waiki, 9 masked beasts of valor, which were as strong or stronger than those of the Amaterasu and the Tsukuyomi. Konan let out a sigh of defeat. Also, it didn't matter if this meant Ryu trusted her. Kanan said, "Fine." Naruto told him, "Just get down on your knees and open your mouth." Konan shut her eyes in fear. He told her earlier to speak out, and what happened earlier that day didn't help. She threatened to kill him if he ever told anyone what happened now. The wolf, Koinu, took a small step back and jumped into Konan's mouth, where it easily went through her throat. Kanan said Koinu tasted like wet dirt because she had been pushed to the ground so much as a child. Finally, the wolf's tail stuck out of her mouth one last time. Konan slurped it up like it was a string of spaghetti. While she coughed for a while, she held her throat. It felt weird and hurt a little, but the big dog's fur tickled her. If Jiraiya can have a toad living inside him, then Konan should too. A little cough came out of her eyes, which were only half closed. She could see a hand in front of her, getting ready to help her stand up. When she looked up, Ryu had a look on his face that seemed to be hurt, but it only lasted a second. When she took his hand, he slowly pulled her to her feet, as if she were a fragile doll who didn't want to break. Naruto said, "I'm sorry." This made Konan raise an eyebrow. Ryu had never said sorry before, so this was new for her. "Just so you know, I'm grateful for you doing that. Really. And I'm sorry for causing you harm," stated Naruto. As long as she was Ryu's partner, he never showed gratitude for anything. He thought of everything around him as a chore. But Konan thought it was strange for him to be thankful. She might have been wrong about Yokazi. He might have feelings after all. "We should get going, we have to retrieve Zabuza's blade after all." They both left, but the woman with blue hair had a small smile on her face. Konan gave her a nod. She thought there was someone warm and loving inside that cold person. It was just that someone had to help him see it. The Akatsuki partners were walking through a forest to get to the land of waves. When they got close to the country, they decided not to use paper and bats to get there because it would waste chakra and be easier to walk. Naruto stuffed a furry animal down Konan's throat a while ago, so the two hadn't talked in a while. But once they got to the land of waves, their mission would soon begin. Naruto knew where the sword was, so it should still be there when he got there. But he kept his hood up and used genjutsu to cover his eyes, making him look like he had gray eyes instead of Sharingans. People in the country might recognize him from his time as a mask, but he didn't think so. He could feel his hood being pulled back to where it belonged, over his back. He looked at Konan and thought that she must have done it. Konan didn't need to say anything because he knew what that look on Ryu's face meant. You will only draw more attention to yourself when you have your hood up, it's easier just to look like yourself, said Konan clearly. Ryu sighed at her because he knew she was right. After a short time, both Naruto and Konan could see a huge, long bridge that linked the main land to the land of waves. They read the gold plaque near one of the bridge's checkpoints as they made their way to the bridge. The name of the bridge was written in big, bold letters. "This is the Great Naruto Bridge." This landmark brought back so many memories for the blonde. This bridge was the site of some of his happiest times as his mask, as well as events that changed his life and character. Going back. The buildings on a big bridge were covered in a thick fog that obscured everything nearby. 4 people were on their way to the bridge to finish building it. People thought the bridge was the country's last chance. The economy had lost all hope and future because of a small tyrant who had taken over. Because of this, 4 shinobi from the strongest hidden villages were sent to protect the bridge, even though it would cost them their lives. There was only one Jonin sensei and 2 genin on this team. But on the team was the village's best new player. A young kunoichi with the sharpest mind and the best skills is Sasuke Uchiha. Sakura Haruno is the famous and legendary Kakashi Hatake of the Sharingan Eye. And finally, the number 1 knucklehead ninja who is always talking too much. The Kyuubi Jinchuriki is Naruto Uzumaki. They were told by the Sandaime Hokage to help and protect Tizuna as he built the bridge until it was finished. Once the bridge was finished, the economy of the Land of Waves would be back to normal. But Gado, the founder of the Gado Company and a very rich shipping magnate, had plans to stop them. On the other hand, Gado was a drug lord who also smuggled illegal goods. He went after the Land of Waves because it had a lot of money. He stole the money and land there and left the people to die. Gado hired a famous and wanted ninja who was missing all over the world. Zabuza Momochi used to be a swordsman in the mist. In the Land of Waves, things got worse. Zabuza attacked, and Kakashi was stuck in bed. The genin worked on their chakra to get ready for the next attack. Now Zabuza was attacking again with his partner Haku. The bridge was tense as Sasuke fought Haku and Kakashi fought Zabuza. Sasuke was being controlled by the ice release user. Sakura threw a kunai at him to help her beloved, but Haku caught it instead. But this took the Haiden user's attention away long enough for a shuriken to cut his mask. And then how the blonde hero came out of a dramatic cloud of smoke. There were many people who thought the blonde boy wasn't lying, and his sensei quickly scolded him for it. The fact that Naruto was so relaxed made things worse when he showed up. He later let himself get trapped in Haku's deadly jutsu without knowing it. The older boy hit Sasuke and killed him. Later, Naruto used the chakra in his biju to hit Haku and beat him. Naruto said, "You're that boy," as his fist was just inches from Haku's face. In a monotone voice, Haku asked, "Why do you hesitate? You promised to avenge your friend by killing me. Or was that promise merely empty words?" Haku went on. Naruto let out a growl and then turned his attention back to Sasuke's dead body. He turned back to his opponent and hit him in the face. Haku fell to the ground and spat blood out of his mouth. Haku picked himself up from the ground and wiped the blood off his lip with his sleeve. "Your attacks aren't as strong as they used to be. You can't kill me with attacks like those. You can't keep your promise while holding back like this. Perhaps your friend didn't mean that much to you as you believe." Then he remembered Haku's words as clearly as if he were living those times again. There are people who make this mistake. Not killing your enemy out of compassion or pity, just letting them continue to draw breath, can you understand? Not having a dream. Not being needed by anyone. The pain of merely being alive, merely existing. What use would you be to anyone? Their life would have no meaning, existing through pain and struggle, signifying nothing. Haku said as he stood up. Naruto asked, "What are you trying to say?" Haku just gave a small smile. "You really are a blind little one, I am speaking of myself." Haku said that. "This battle has proven to me that I am no longer of any use to Zabuza Sama. My reason for existing has been stripped away from me like clothes." "Why do you think that way?" Naruto asked himself. Zabuza. Why care for that guy anyway? Why devote yourself to scum who has no meaning of the word honor? Is that guy so important to you? That's the sorriest thing I've ever heard. There were others who were once important to me. A long time ago. Said Haku. My parents. They were farmers that lived in a snowy mountainous village in the Land of Water. We were very poor, but we were content. My parents were good people and they were kind to me. However, something happened long before my birth. It wasn't my fault, it was the blood. Blood? Naruto asked. Haku said, my father changed. He killed my mother and tried to kill me. Naruto gasped in shock at the horrible act. People believed that the civil wars that centered around the Land of Water were caused by clans of shinobi with Keki Genkai. The clans of shinobi were hated and shunned after the many civil wars ended in the Land of Water, my clan among them. They went into hiding so to not be found, denying the existence of their birthright and concealing their abilities. Many who were found were hunted down like animals. They even made a sport from hunting the Keki Genkai wielders where the people had fun killing them. If you searched your friends' memories you would have found hardship for bearing a Keki Genkai. You can never understand the cruelty people can commit, they fear that which they don't understand. Naruto's eyes became a little downcast. He understood what it was like far too well. My mother was from the Yuki clan of Kiri. She was successful in obscuring her Keki Genkai. She met and fell in love with a simple farmer and they married each other. After that, my mother believed she would lead a peaceful life with no hardships to the end of her days. Until my father had discovered my mother's and my own abilities. A day came when my father killed my mother. He was in tears and still he had no qualms about killing her and me. Before I realized it, I killed my father using my Keki Genkai. After I was myself again, I was no longer myself. My parents were gone and I was alone, and something was taken from me, my emotions and my purpose. Because of that, I held little remorse for the world, as if my existence didn't matter. No one needed me, so I was nobody. Spoke to Haku. Like me, Naruto thought in a sad way. Why are you so determined to be Hokage, the greatest shinobi in your village, the most acknowledged and respected? You want their eyes looking at you, not through you, to recognize you as a person and a great ninja. It's only through the eyes others do people such as ourselves have significance. People don't look at you, let alone know you're there. It's like you don't truly exist. Now if someone came into your life and acknowledged you with every part of their body to their heart, wouldn't that person become important to you? Zabuza looked at me, and his eyes were not rife with hatred or fear. He did not shun or ignore me for my abilities. Indeed, my powers were what he wanted. He gave me a reason to live. A purpose. Talked about Haku. There were tears in the corners of his eyes. I was so happy. I have failed you, Zabuza. Sama, I have been unable to become the weapon you sought. Said Haku. Haku kept Naruto's attention by saying, Naruto. Kun. Please. His eyes were so empty that it looked like Naruto's life was ending right in front of him. Kill me. End of flashback. I turned into something you talked about. As Naruto kept staring blankly at the plaque, he thought, Haku. When Konan looked at Ryu, he had been looking at the plaque for a while, which scared Konan. She knew that the bridge was named for the Kyuubi Jinchuriki. No doubt, she knew the Jinchuriki's names because it was important to know them. But Konan could tell that her partner was emotionally dead because of something. Did he care about this country in some way? She wasn't sure. If he had been staring at the plaque for this long, she didn't think words could reach the blonde. She went up to the man and told him to get back to reality. Naruto felt a soft pressure on his hand where he had pulled himself back together. When he looked down, he saw Konan's hand on his, and she looked like she was worried about him. Are you okay? Konan asked in a soft voice. At first, Naruto thought she was pretending to be worried about him because that's what he had seen people do in the past. He let it go, though, and went along with it. Naruto pulled his hand away from Konan's roughly and said, I'm fine. I know where the sword is. We shouldn't be here for too long. The blue woman let out a sigh. There was always something wrong in her mind. She walked behind him and always looked at his black and red body. He had to let some of himself out if she wanted to help him. On top of a big cliff, the two Akatsuki members could see the great Naruto bridge and a small village in the land of waves. The sun still had power over the world and was warming everything with its light. They were standing in front of two cross-shaped gravestones made of wood. There was a lot of moss on both of the gravestones, and the wood looked like it had been broken down over time. One of the grave markers was a brown sash with a trail of fringe going around it. The other one was supposed to have a huge sword behind it. The sword wasn't there, though. It was Konan who said, the sword is gone. That looks like it, Naruto said. It was here the last time I was in this country. Then it's clear that someone took it, Kong replied. Then Naruto replied, obviously. We should ask around to see if anyone knows where it is, Konan said. He gave her a nod, but when he looked at Haku's grave, he remembered what he had said to him in the forest. Going back. It was getting light outside in the land of waves. The air was filled with the happy sounds of birds. There was darkness around the light from the sun. But something was not the same. A boy was wearing an orange jumpsuit. His hair was blonde and yellow, and he had 3 clear whisker marks on it. The boy was lying on the ground with his arms and legs spread out across the ground. He had a kunai in his hand, and scuff marks all over his body showed that he had been training hard and for a long time. This boy was Naruto, and he was sound asleep after all the training he had done. He was trying to get good at the tree climbing exercise that made chakra control better. Birds got the courage to land on his bed and do what birds do because he was so still. But at the time, there was another one in the forest. Someone who was gathering herbs to help someone who was hurt. Naruto was sleeping in the forest when this person saw him. The person's eyes became hard and steely. There was care as the person walked up to Naruto. The person held out their arm, ready to hit Naruto. His arm got stronger and stronger. What it looked like it was waiting to do was attack Naruto and kill him. Instead, the person tried to wake Naruto up by nudging him a few times. "Wake up. You'll get sick if you sleep here," a woman told Naruto as he opened his eyes. While trying to clear his eyes from the sleepiness, he pushed himself off the ground and sat down. Naruto asked in a tired voice, "Hey, who the hell are you?" When Naruto saw the person, he blushed with shame. Naruto scratched his cheek and asked, "So what are you doing out here?" The woman said, "Gathering herbs." "Herbs?" Naruto asked. "That's right, they're used to treat and heal wounds," the woman said. After a short time, both the woman and Naruto were looking through the fields for certain herbs that could help them. Naruto complained, "Man, you work early." As Haku spoke, he smiled and said, "I like it early, it's calm, but I didn't expect to find anyone sleeping out here in the woods." When asked, Naruto laughed and said, "I'm training." When the woman saw the headband, she joked, "So you must be a shinobi because I noticed that, or is it just for fashion?" "Yeah, only super awesome ninja like me can wear this headband," said Naruto proudly. Naruto blushed when the woman said, "Very impressive. You must be training for something dangerous?" Naruto replied with a big smile, "I'm just getting better at what I do to get stronger." The woman asked, "You look strong now, isn't that enough?" No, I need to become stronger so I can fulfill my dream," Naruto told me. "Is that so, and your dream would be?" "To be the greatest Hokage. The strongest shinobi in my village so everyone can accept my existence and know that I'm somebody and also someone I have to prove something to as well." Naruto yelled loudly. The woman asked, "Are you training for this person or just for yourself?" The woman laughed a little when Naruto hummed in a blank way. This made Naruto laugh, and he wanted to know what was funny. "Is there someone you care about a lot?" the woman asked softly. Naruto asked with his eyes squinted in confusion, "Someone who? What are you saying about someone precious?" The wise woman said, "You see, when someone has something important they want to protect, that's when they become truly strong." She had no idea that those words would inspire Naruto to become stronger than he was. Naruto let what she said sink in like water. What she said was true. "Yeah, I get what you're saying," Naruto said, which made the woman smile. Before leaving, the woman said, "You will become strong, amazingly strong. Goodbye. Hopefully we'll meet again sometime. Oh, and by the way, I'm a boy." Naruto was so scared that he grabbed his face in his hands. No way, he's more pretty than Sakura Chan. I was scared, Naruto thought. End of flashback. Naruto kept looking at Haku's grave as if he were dreaming that he was going to feel sad. He had fond memories of Haku back then, and even though it might sound strange, he thought of Haku as a true friend, even though they were enemies. "Sorry, Haku, but I've gotten stronger. I still haven't found a very important person to keep safe. I also think that finding someone special to me is out of reach," Naruto thought in a neutral tone. "I will bring you back when I reach my dream world. You and Zabuza will both be here again." Kanon told Ryu, "Let's go," and she folded her body into a paper shape. Naruto walked to the edge of the cliff instead, but not before taking a moment to look back at the two graves. He jumped off the cliff with style, and his Akatsuki cloak flew through the air. The two members of Akatsuki were walking through a pretty wealthy part of the Land of Waves. Stores and merchants were seen all over trying to sell their goods and take over buildings. Some people said they were rare and worth more than diamonds. Naruto saw that the Land of Waves was a lot busier and had a much more stable economy than it was when he had last been here almost 3 years ago. He would have liked it when he was younger. His real self did nothing but stare at it with a blank look on its face. Lucky for them, no one knew Naruto's face. People might not have known who he was without his famous whisker marks. Also, he saw that some stores and restaurants were named after him and other members of Team 7, like Naruto and Friends Ramen, Sakura Hot Springs, and paintings and pictures of Sasuke. He wondered if the people in the Land of Waves knew that Sasuke had killed Naruto. At the time, it didn't matter. The blonde was busy at the time. But he noticed something. It was a store where shinobi could buy weapons and magic scrolls. His curiosity got the best of him, and Naruto went inside, where Konan raised an eyebrow at him. She planned to wait outside. She wasn't really interested in weapons. The person using the Sharingan was looking at the weapon racks and the ceiling scrolls at the moment. The blonde thought that was cool. The weapons were in great shape and were real shinobi weapons. Most shinobi shops outside of hidden villages sold shoddy goods. Their kunais were so badly broken and worn that he wasn't sure the knife could cut through butter, and their sealing scrolls were so bad that they wouldn't seal anything. Even a baby could do a better job. Well, Naruto came from a clan that was very good at sealing, so he had high standards for seals. Any seal below B rank made him sick to his stomach. The only person who could seal better than Naruto was the late Mito Uzumaki. Naruto was impressed that trade in the Land of Waves could get these weapons. He looked away from the racks and around the store, thinking about how great the economy would be in 10 years. Naruto was about to leave the store because he had had enough for one day, but he stopped when his breathing got short and his body stopped moving and stood still. A katana was sitting on a stand. But this katana was not like any other. The blade, hilt, and tsuba were all white. The tsuba had a pattern that looked like hollow snowflakes on a circle. A white ribbon that was 1.5 meters long and had a bell on it was attached to the pommel with tough string. Naruto was very interested in the katana. It was stunningly beautiful in every way. That wasn't what amazed him, though. It's impossible that they would have found such a sword in this store by chance. Why is this blade here when it was said to be lost? Naruto thought about the Shiromikairan. No. Tsurugi, or White Lotus Bud Sword. The Tonbogiri and the Shiromikairan were sister swords. They were both made by the same smith at the same forge, but the Tonbogiri was made during a harsh summer and the Shiromikairan during a beautiful winter. It was also known as the best way to fight the Tonbogiri, which meant that the Black Blade's special skills couldn't be used against the Shiromikairan. Because it took away all defense, the white sword also had special powers and properties. For example, when the Shiromikairan fought an ordinary katana, it would make the other katana as fragile as fresh snow, while the ordinary katana would break soon after. Thieves were supposed to have stolen the blade when they attacked the Kajiro temple, which was also where the Tonbogiri was kept. The blade was then lost soon after. It was too random to find this sword. An old man walking with a cane said, "Found something you like, young man." Naruto looked at his most expensive item in stock, and the old man saw him. Norio asked, "Where did you get this sword?" "Well, it was first given to my father, whose father gave it to him, whose father gave it to him, whose father gave it to him, who won it from a friend playing shogi." The old man clarified. Naruto raised an eyebrow at the story, which was pretty direct. What did Naruto want to know about the price of the sword? How much? The old man sighed and tried not to remember the painful memory. Well, that's the problem. It's too expensive for any of those stuck up posh nobles who said it was far above our tastes. I was going to give it to my son, but he died many years ago, and so did my wife before him. I can also see pain in your eyes. You lost someone recently, someone important to you. The old man said. Naruto didn't say anything, but he knew the old man was right. The old store owner said, "If you want the sword, it's yours, young man." Naruto replied, "You honor me, but I can't accept such kindness." It was the old man's cane that hit him in the back of the head. Madara, the old goat, also hit him that way. Naruto felt homesick. He really couldn't accept such kindness from someone who hadn't shown him much lately. Don't make that excuse. That old thing has been gathering dust for years. You can take that sword, and you will. You will take that sword, and you'll be happy about it. Naruto disciplined the old man, and even though he was used to pain, the old man hit him hard. That kind of sword is for men only, and you are a man in your own right. Also, I can't give the sword to anyone else. You honor me by taking it. I'll get the sheath. The old man stumbled back into the store. Naruto just stood there and stared. He could count on one hand the number of people who were kind to him. He thought the Sandaime and Iruka were nice because he had the Kyuubi with him at the time. He took the white sword out of his left hand. He also talked about how getting the Tonbogiri was different from getting the Shiromikairan. Because he was mean and violent to get the Tonbogiri, the Shiromikairan was given to him out of kindness and generosity. Naruto smiled a real smile because he knew that sometimes people could be kind. Before the old man came back with the sheath, he looked at the blade some more. "Sir, thank you for doing this for me," she thanked Naruto in a sincere way. The old man with the big smile said, "Don't thank me. This world is full of hatred, and it festers with each day," said the man. "I believe that it is the everyday deeds of ordinary folk that keep the darkness at bay. Random acts of unforgettable kindness, that is what stops hatred from spreading in this world." The man spoke with wise words. Naruto tried to convince himself in his mind that people were not naturally mean. But some of what the man said was true. Though Naruto didn't say anything, he smiled at the man as a thank you before leaving the store. But as soon as he left the store, he went back to being emotionless. He wasn't sure if he really had no feelings or not, but when he was going through something very strong, these strange feelings would come up. The blonde saw Konan waiting for him outside, and she looked at Naruto's left hand right away, before he sealed the white blade into his left wrist. She didn't have to wait long for him to leave though. She also wanted to check out what else was in the area. They were now walking through the neighborhood again. Konan was interested in what she saw. Plus, she had a big event coming up tomorrow. She hadn't been outside of a megacure in years, so she wasn't sure what she would get. Konan saw a jewelry cart and decided to check it out to see what she could find and what she liked. The woman who owned the cart and its parts was told, my, aren't you a pretty flower?" Since Konan didn't often get compliments, she just faked a smile and said, "Thank you." Her amber eyes moved quickly from one necklace to another. Right away, she saw a pair of blue hair clips with flower shapes on them. The old woman said again, "Those hair clips would look great on you." But when Konan saw the price, she thought it was too high for her. They said, "Thank you," and then left the cart. Naruto saw what was going on and also went up to the cart to look at the blue hair clips. After a short time, both Naruto and Konan were done with the district and on their way to a small cafe on the edge of town. Things were going well until someone snubbed Konan on the shoulder. The man said, "Why don't you watch where you're going, you idiot?" Konan's face lit up with anger at that very moment. When she was about to speak, she felt Rai's hand on her shoulder. After running into her, the man thought they were going to do something to him, so he stepped in. Terrible mistake. The man asked, "What's wrong, buddy? You want to fight?" But Naruto just stared at him. People didn't want to fight when he glared at them, but Madara made them. But people lose their will to live when Naruto stares at them. The man who ran into Konan turned white in the face as he looked into the blonde man's gray eyes. Naruto used a genjutsu on his eyes to make them look gray. He felt like death was staring him straight in the face, threatening only pain and suffering. The rude man did what any other person would have done. While yelling that someone was going to kill him, "Run." Kanan joked, "I could have handled it." Naruto took his hand off of Konan's shoulder and said, "This is much easier. He'll be dead by the time the sun goes down." As soon as they got to the cafe, both Naruto and Konan ordered green tea. However, the woman with blue hair thought the cafe was odd. Each waitress looked at her partner with love in her eyes and gushed over him. She would agree that he was very handsome, but women can be so shallow at times. Kanan said, "Those women look like they have their eyes on you." Naruto sipped his hot green tea and said, "They can stare all they want. They want what they can't get. However, they may be of some use." Naruto waved his hand over to the waitresses, and they were right there with him. They moved so quickly that Konan thought there were multiple hearts around their heads. Naruto asked, "Don't you happen to know about the two graves that look out over the hill from here?" The girls gave him a strong nod. He asked, "By chance, wouldn't you have seen a huge sword there by chance?" And they all nodded their heads in answer. "Do you know where that blade is? I'm a collector, and that blade interests me. It won't be the only thing I catch. If you help me," Naruto asked, trying to get a girl to like him. Konan frowned. They told him who owned the sword, where they lived, and other things. Tenzen Daikoku, a crime boss, was said to have the sword and 10,000 mercenaries working for him as bodyguards. Naruto laughed at that number. He would have been impressed if it was 10,000 guardians. Naruto asked, "So, did you see anything you liked when we went by the district?" He was trying to start a conversation that wasn't about work. He said with a hint of sadness, "Well, yes, there were those hair clips I wanted, and I also thought it might be a good birthday present." Naruto asked with a hint of surprise, "It's your birthday?" It's Conan's birthday tomorrow, and this is the first time she's been away from a megacure in years, so she wanted to get herself something special. He knew he was stepping on thin ice when he asked, "How old will you be tomorrow?" Women didn't like being told they were old, and Conan might not like it either. Conan said, "I'm 32 tomorrow." He wasn't upset by the question. Naruto sipped his green tea and said, "Okay then. Although you don't want to hear this, but we're going to retrieve Zabuza's blade tomorrow. So be ready." It shook, making the ground rumble. Tenzen's mansion was being built by tens of thousands of mercenaries from a rival clan. It looked like Tenzen hadn't paid off his huge gambling debts and had even stolen from that clan. It was like having a pit bull. They didn't give up until the job was done. Aside from the rewards that came with their jobs, the only thing they were paid in was blood money. Two people were sitting on a tree and looking out over the army. They had red clouds on their black cloaks, and their faces didn't show any fear. Mercenaries were way too weak for their own good. If it had been an army of shinobi, they might have been impressed. Kanan said as she looked at the armies, "Tenzen must keep the sword close to him. Or at least someone is holding the sword and is close to Tenzen, like a bodyguard." Naruto said as he got ready to jump down to the makeshift battlefields, "You go get the sword. I'll deal with the mercenaries." Ryu looked at her with half closed eyes as Conan replied, "Just kill them all. Don't kill any of them. Think of it as a birthday wish," Conan said. His body spread out into paper airplanes, which he flew to Tenzen's house. The mercenaries who were running along the path stopped when they saw a man in the middle of them wearing a black cloak with red clouds on it. The hired gun asked, "Who is this guy?" A mercenary on a horse yelled, "Doesn't matter, we'll kill him too," as he drew a spear to stab Naruto. Instead, the blonde grabbed the mercenary's spear with his left hand, shook it around like it wasn't even there, and threw the man into the air. He would only have broken bones when he landed. Heaved a sigh. It was so much easier to kill, but since it was Conan's birthday, he would do something different. He sent chakra into his right eye, which is where the pattern of his eternal Mangekyo showed up. Which were three thick sides with small protrusions that looked like daggers in a tomo pattern that went around his pupil in a circle. Naruto spoke, "Kamiyonaniyo, Kumonju no Yuki, Kamiyonaniyo, 9 masked beasts of valor." Behind him, a big blue mandala appeared, and his beasts jumped out of their kanji. Soon, they attacked the mercenaries, but they didn't kill them. Instead, they left them in such bad shape that they needed medical help right away. Conan was walking quickly through Tenzen's house. She thought he was on the top floor because Nagato's tower was the tallest in the village, and that meant all the bad guys lived in the tallest tower. As she went up the stairs, she sneaked past the guards who were busy fighting with her partner. When she got to the top floor, Tenzen was arguing like a pig. Thurzan asked, "But how did you get up here?" "It's not possible. You shall learn that nearly anything is not impossible for shinobi, and also weapons don't really work against me." Conan replied with a neutral tone. Suddenly, a big, strong man with a huge sword that looked like a cleaver smashed through the wall. The man slashed her with the Kabikirabocho and yelled, "Well, how about this weapon, bitch?" There was no blood, though. Instead, many sheets of paper wrapped around the big man and cut off his oxygen supply. Tenzen was scared because this woman in a strange cloak killed his strongest hired gun in just a few seconds. Even though Conan knew the sword was very heavy, she tried to take it from the unconscious man. She wondered if the swordsman of the mist had been trained to handle such heavy weapons. But Ryu took the blade from her and put his hand on her, making her feel better. Even though it took some work. "We got what we came for, so let's go," Ryu said with a blank look on his face. Naruto thought about it some more. Tenzen used to be a politician for the Land of Water, but he seems to have betrayed the country after Zabuza's failed coup. And this job was so easy that Chunin could do it too. But wait, it would be easy if the sword stayed at the gravesite. With Tenzen's many soldiers, it would be hard for anyone who didn't have a Jonin team. Because Mei knew Tenzen had the sword, she told Ryu to steal it and wipe out Tenzen's army. That woman. Naruto thought to himself in annoyance. He was tricked. That woman was very slippery. When Conan's partner told her to leave, she did so, leaving Tenzen alone. This made the crime boss wonder if he had seen the blonde man before. A little less whiskered, he almost looked like an older Naruto Uzumaki. The blonde brat was famous in the land of waves, and after his real family history came out, he was famous all over the world. Konan and Ryu were strolling along a path. Naruto closed up the Kabikirabocho to make it easier to carry. Naruto said out loud, "Oh, that reminds me," as if he had just found a question for the universe. He reached into his Akatsuki cloak and took out a few things that were tied together with twine and wrapped in brown paper. He gave the bigger of the two things. As Naruto gave the object to Konan and unbundled it, he said, "Happy birthday." The first gift was a pair of white Tekko, shinobi hand covers, that went up past the elbow and up to the bicep. They didn't have fingers. I imbued those with seals made just for you. The right Tekko has a tracker seal. So long as you're wearing it, I'll find you anywhere in the world, while the left Tekko is equipped with a barrier seal. It can sense when an attack will kill and immediately create a barrier shielding you from harm. The woman with blue hair looked at them for a while before taking them from Ryu and putting them on. They fit very well. Kanan smiled and said, "Thank you." As an orphan, no one had ever taken the time to get her anything. She had to make do with what she could find. Naruto gave the second gift, which was also tied with twine. Like before, Konan took the gift out of the wrapping and saw a small box that could be flipped over to hold jewelry. When Konan opened the box, she took a short breath. Yesterday, it was the hair clips she looked at. The ones with blue scales. Kanan smiles a little with happiness. She really wanted those hair clips, but they were too pricey for her. She tried to put the clips in her hair, but her blonde partner who was holding a Sharingan stopped her. He said in a soft voice, "Let me." He grabbed the clips from her and put them on her left bang, close to the line of her hair. Also, even he had to agree that Konan was a stunningly beautiful woman. I imbued these hair clips with seals as well. When you want to attack, I can remotely pour my chakra into you in short bursts, making your techniques stronger and faster. This is what you need for normal combos, Naruto explained. Now I have one more present for you. He opened the Shiromikiren. No. Tsurugi by putting chakra into the seal on his left wrist. He kept it for Konan. The woman with blue hair picked up the sword and looked at how it was made. She didn't know much about weapons or kenjutsu, but she could tell that the sword was not even close to being good. "Thank you, but I'm not good at kenjutsu and I don't think I'll find any teacher to help me," Konan said with a blank face. Konan raised an eyebrow at Naruto's emotionless answer, "I'll teach you. I'm a kenjutsu master, I'll teach you what I know and even help you develop your own style. I could even teach sealing if that's what you wish." The king turned his attention back to the sword. It was good to learn new things all the time. She was going to answer, but when she looked up, he was gone. She turned her head to the left and saw him walk away. She sighed and went after him. But Naruto had a small smile on his face. It was so small that it was hard to see, but it was there. Naruto started feeling strange things after meeting Konan not long ago. He thought it was all made up, but could be. Mei was in her office in the Land of Water, waiting for Ryu and Konan, who were her guards. She had one more job for them to do, and she had been paying the Akatsuki well. As her thoughts went to Ryu, she smiled. Oh, how she wanted to tie him up again. But she didn't think that would happen again. There was a knock on the door, and she let the person in. Ao said, "Mizukage. Sama, Ryu Yokazi, and Konan have returned." Mei laughed even bigger because her favorite toy was back in the village. The door opened first for Konan, who was wearing her new Tekko and hair clips that were pinned to her left bang. Soon after, Naruto walked through, but he didn't look happy to be there, if he could feel happy at all. Naruto raised an eyebrow in irritation when Mei asked, "So I trust the mission was a success?" She asked with an overly sweet smile. He took out the scroll that had the Kabikirabocho on it. "Please Mizukage. Sama, could you give us our next mission?" Konan asked in a polite voice. Mei kept smiling and didn't pay attention to what Konan said. "There is a single bandit camp that has been causing trouble for the civilians of the Land of Water. Please deal with these awful men, Ryu Kun," asked Mei with puppy dog eyes. Naruto was scared when he saw those eyes. He had to get out of the Land of Water quickly. Ao knew exactly how Naruto felt because he saw what Mei was doing and how Ryu reacted to it. Mei did the same thing to a poor Chunin. The reason Mei wasn't married yet was because she was too needy, and most men who were seeing her ended up in a mental hospital or had to leave the country. Some men even faked their own deaths to get away from her. She even took some good-looking men hostage. Ryu must have been caught in the web of the Black Widow, also known as Mei Terumi, because she always killed her young, just like a spider. That's why Mei didn't like it when people talked about her love life. Ryu ran out of the room like a scared mouse, not caring where the bandit camp was because he had a new job to do. Even though Konan chased after him, he quickly left. Naruto asked his partner, "How should we handle it?" As they looked at the large group of thieves that were causing trouble in the land of water. "We go in together. We should work on working together and maybe make combo attacks," Konana replied with a neutral look on her face. Pain. Sama appreciates when the teams of the Akatsuki are able to work cohesively together, or at least, in combat scenarios. Naruto said as he opened the Tanbogiri, "I agree. My wind and lightning natures will help you because they can improve your paper ninjutsu, making your papers sharp or fast." When Konan said, yes, they both charged at the bandit camp, surprising the humans without honor. Even though the deaths of Yahiko and the other Akatsuki made Konan tougher over the years, she was still a kind person at heart who liked to kill her enemies with as little pain as possible. So she put her opponents out of their minds with her paper sheets. 2 enemies came at her, and she fired some paper shurikens at them. The paper was as hard as steel, so it easily cut through the men. While this was going on, Ryu was quickly killing his enemies with the Tanbogiri and wind. Enhanced shuriken to wipe out the bandits. Konan folded several sheets of paper into complicated airplane shapes. Using her paper powers, she fired the planes, but she felt a burst of chakra enter her, and her planes got what looked like a wind lance on the tip, making them sharper and faster. It easily went through the thieves like bullets. She quickly turned her head to see Rai nod at her. He must have poured his chakra into her, making her strong enough to fight back. When more thieves gathered around him, Naruto jumped over to where she was standing. "Get ready to attack, Konan," Naruto told her as they stood next to each other. But Konan had a thought. When she turned her head to look at her partner, she didn't see his red eyes and golden hair. She saw brown eyes and hair that was as orange as a sunset. Going back. "Konan, get ready to attack," Yahiko told him as he fought Kumo shinobi in the Land of Rain. The Akatsuki wanted to make the land peaceful by helping people understand and accept each other. They were going to meet the Kumo shinobi to try to work out a deal without fighting. There were plans for peace talks, but things didn't go as planned. One thing led to another, and now they were in this situation. It all began when Yahiko gave a terrible speech. He had never been good at them before. As Konan put her paper around them to make a kind of defense, she yelled, "All right." Yahiko told Nagato, "Use your wind jutsu to improve Konan's papers." Nagato agreed. The man with the red head put his hand on Konan's shoulder and sent wind chakra into her. Konan fired her paper sheets, which she mentally folded into shuriken and threw at the enemy. The shuriken had extra blades that could be used to cut down more enemies. Yahiko made a water jutsu because he didn't want to be beaten by Konan. Sweden. Kozui no Suimon, water release, flooding Watergate. Yahiko yelled as he sprayed water from his mouth onto the ground. The already wet ground became even more slippery, and the Kumo shinobi lost his balance because of the force of the water. With the Shirado, Asura Path, Nagato made a mechanical arm stick out from his shoulder and began firing guided missiles at the fallen shinobi. The missiles hit the shinobi and exploded, turning him into ash. After a short time, things began to calm down around the muddy area. Kudos to Yahiko for his ironic words, "Well, that went well." Konan and Nagato laughed at him. Nagato reminded Yahiko, "If you call this a success." This made Yahiko admit fault, and the two of them started arguing right away. Konan smiled happily at her 2 best friends. End of flashback. Naruto yelled, "Kaiten, Kan Kaisei Kyoheki, fire release, flame formation battlement," and slammed his left hand on the ground. Flames and fire shot out from his fingers and split into other flames and fire and so on. A lot of the thieves caught fire. Naruto got down on his knees and watched as his flames burned the thieves. He didn't feel anything while he did it. "Konan, cut them down," Naruto told Konan. And as he put his hand on Konan without looking, he felt something soft and firm on a woman. She mentally fired her paper sheets at the last of the on-fire thieves after he pumped his chakra into her. Where they died and fell to the ground. When Naruto used his Sharingan to see that all the thieves were dead, he did nothing but press his fingers into Konan's soft, firm skin. The woman with blue hair, on the other hand, was red as a tomato, and when she lowered her eyes, she saw Ryu touching her behind. He turned his back on her, which made Konan think he was covering up his sly grin. As her anger grew, and she didn't understand what was going on, she did what any normal woman would do to perverts. She first told him off. I thought Ryu would get the message when Konan growled, "Yokaze." Naruto hummed at her, which meant he wasn't paying attention to the fact that his hand was on a special part of the woman. Even though Ryu got up from kneeling, his hand was still on hers as Konan kept saying, you. When he looked at the beautiful woman with blue hair and saw his hand on her behind, he knew right away what was going on. He tried to say sorry right away, and he got a little red in the face. But Konan wouldn't listen. Instead, she cocked her fist and hit Ryu in the face, more specifically his nose, with it like a pistol. Her eyes lit up with anger. Normally calm Konan would never do something like that unless he was really mad. Ryu fell to the ground and looked like he was unconscious. A woman punched him a lot, but he had to say it. He had never felt a punch that strong before. At the same time, Konan realized what she had done and sighed. She may have overreacted. Together, Konan and Naruto walked back to Kirigakure. Naruto was wrapped in paper sheets that covered his body except for his face. He had tissues up his nose at the moment. No one was sure if he cut his nose in that moment or when Konan punched him. The pain made him moan, and Konan turned his back on him. You look fine, Konan said without any background. Naruto didn't say anything but moan in pain. Naruto said, you punch harder than that woman. Konan looked at him funny, not sure who he was talking about. I see. Thank you for getting rid of the bandit camp. Unfortunately, my job with the Akatsuki is over, Mei said, looking sad and tired. The blonde would be missed. She had the best sex in a long time with him. Also, she loved getting him to react, even though it would be hard because of how stoic he seemed. It was worth it, though. They didn't seem to mind, and both of them seemed glad to be leaving the land of water. Mei said in a sultry voice, I hope to see you very soon, Ryu-kun. This made Naruto shiver. Ryu and Konan were finally leaving Kirigakure and the land of the water. That was a pretty interesting event, Konan said. A large amount of developments and troubles happened within that village, said Naruto. But I wonder what Dan's is planning right now, Konan said out loud. Naruto himself told her that Ryu had been captured. Most likely coming up with tactics to kill me since I represent a danger to Konoha, said Naruto. But we shouldn't be worried about Danzo, Konan said. Ryu gave her a look that the female Akatsuki member could understand. Good job, Uchiha. When he and Naruto would fight again in 5 months, and only one of them would be alive at the end. Konan, we will head to one of my bases north of here so to improve your body and then. I want you to tell me everything you know about Obito, and leave out nothing. Told Naruto, and Konan agreed. 2 people who work for the Hokage were in a small room in Konohagakure. The old rocks called Homura and Kaharu. Danzo, a former enemy and fellow advisor, had just called them to talk about something that he thought would later be a threat to Konoha's peace and security. When it came to the village's safety, Kaharu and Homura were, of course, more angry. Their only goal was to keep it safe, and they thought that events like the Uchiha massacre and the Hyuga affair were necessary to do so. When Suna first gave up to Konoha after their invasion failed, Danzo spoke out against it right away and said they should attack Suna for betraying them. At the time, Kaharu agreed with him because he thought it made the most sense. But Homura didn't. He was happy with an armistice because he was still angry that Suna had betrayed him. Now, news of Ryu Yokaze's exploits was spreading so quickly across the countries that the shinobi world was in a panic. A lot of shinobi are still angry about the man's sneak attack, and Leaf agents have already told them what happened at the Kajiro Temple and the Tanbogiri. No. Tsurugi. Surprisingly, Iwa had told everyone that Yokaze had sneaked into their village and tried to kill their Tsuchikage. The advisors had a different opinion. They had met Noki the Sandame Tsuchikage more than once. During battle and away from it. And being a student of Mu the Naidem Tsuchikage, a man known for taking advantage of chances to get rich outside of his own village. Okeya was a lot like his teacher, but he was more grumpy. Homura and Kaharu thought that Noki made up the lie so that his village would look like victims. Because no proof or false accusations were found against his village, no one knows why Yokaze came into the village in the first place. Sanagakure and Kirigakure were the only hidden villages that were not connected to Yokaze. Mei hid the fact that she hired the Akatsuki so no one would find out. That's when Dan stumbled through the door. Out of all the dinosaurs in the room, he was one of the most angry and excited about the village. It hurt him that he had missed 3 chances to become Hokage, which he thought was an insult to his skill. He sat down on a couch next to his 2 other advisors. Homura, Kaharu. I wish to discuss with you the recent events that have been surrounding Ryu Yokazi. Started Danzo. Homura asked, what about the Yokazi no Ryu? Dragon of the Night Wind. Yokazi is a threat that must be eliminated at any and all cost. He is the second coming of the Yondaime Hokage. If such an individual is left wandering around without any allegiance to a shinobi village could be disastrous to the Leaf and the other villages. The seedling must be pulled from its roots before it can be allowed to grow and flourish. Explained Danzo, to which Kaharu and Homura agreed. And what shall we do? We have no present location on Yokazi, and even if we do, he'll most likely slip through our fingers yet again. Said Kaharu. Not to mention your failed mission to have Yokazi abandon the Akatsuki and join Konoha failed miserably. We should never have trusted Iwa Shinobi to begin with. Homura was upset. The words, I understand, but this time Danzo said, we will not use shinobi from a backwash village. This made Homura and Kaharu raise their eyebrows. Toge Bushu. I heard a man in the corner with a monotone voice say, yes Danzo. Sama. Your mission is to assassinate Ryu Yokazi, and any and all resources shall be given you if you request it. Toge replied, yes, Danzo. Sama. Toge walked into the light with a sickly grin on his face and said, it would be my pleasure, Danzo. Sama. His blue eyes and rose colored shoulder length hair gave him a slightly androgynous look. Ryu Yokazi will be dead before the next flower blooms of his last day. A pink sash around his waist and a short sleeved green shirt made him look like everyone else. He wore black gloves with pink stains and a dull pink lapel over both of his legs. He also had a flower tattoo that went all the way up his right arm, basic ninja sandals, and the Konoha headband on his forehead. Kuharu asked, so you're sending Toge? Will he be enough for Yokazi, as even Kakashi, the strongest Jonin, was outmatched by Yokazi? He told the man with pink hair, don't worry, Toge is more than qualified to deal with Yokazi. Plus, he has something special that not many other shinobi have. The man with pink hair then left. Grunting and moaning sounds could be heard in the underground halls. The pitch of the sounds matched the person's pain and sounded almost like the wails of someone who has been dead for a long time. It was Obito Uchiha who was moaning. He was doing tests on himself to get stronger so that he would be ready to fight Naruto in the Land of Fire in a large valley south of the Fire Temple. After having a Kage Bunshin do the experiments for him, Obito was sweating a lot. As he sat on a small operating table, his head shook and his breath caught. He wished the pain would go away. The surgery was almost over. Just one more. As the pain hit him again, he bit his lip. Even though it wasn't easy, he had to be strong because his opponent was strong. He was getting a rush of memories from his shadow copy. Obito grunted with happiness because he was no longer in pain. Before getting off the operating table, Obito said, I will show the world the true power of the Sharingan. 12 Sharingan eyes were carved into his back, arranged in 4 rows. Each eye looked in a different direction, almost as if they had life in them or were a sign of humanity trying to escape such pain. They say that the eyes are the mirror to the soul, and those eyes showed horror and pain very clearly. The hallways were a boring white color, and the room smelled like medicine. The bright lights from above them made it impossible for anyone to see what they were doing. The light couldn't get out because there were no windows. Only the white room with a single bed that could also be used as an operating table for tests and procedures. There were soft, white covers on the bed that were great for everyone to sleep on. The pillow was brand new and just the right amount of fluffy, making it easy to sit up and have sweet dreams. The room should have been empty, but there was a woman with blue hair sitting on the bed. She was wearing a revealing navy blue robe with a big hemline that showed off her arms, back, and the lateral part of her cup breasts, as well as her belly, which had piercings around it, and navy blue pants that also served as shoes. She also wore fingerless white teko, shinobi hand covers, that went to her biceps and covered most of her arms, and she had beautiful ska. She got to the base that her host and partner called the mountain's graveyard, because there were the bones of big animals all around the base. If she were being honest, she was a little worried. She was going to have a procedure done on her using cells and blood from a powerful clan that is almost extinct. How the Uzumaki? She didn't know much about the clan except that a lot of them had red hair. Her host, who was happy to answer any questions she had, told her about the other members. This man said that the procedure was safe and that the benefits would be too great to turn down. Her body would get stronger than it ever had been, and her chakra, which was already big and strong, would get even stronger. On top of that, her lifespan would greatly extend. It wouldn't be as long as other Uzumaki who were born with it, but she would probably live as long as anyone else at this point in her life. When she heard the sound of the room's only door opening, her host, partner walked in. Yokazi Ryu, who had also thrown away his Akatsuki cloak and chosen to wear his all-black one instead. In his left hand, he had what looked like a folded hospital gown. Naruto said, "This is for you, so please take off your clothes for me." Konan realized that some of what Naruto said wasn't really what he meant after what happened with the wolf earlier in the week. He understood Konan's glare to mean that there were things that men were not supposed to see, based on what he had seen recently. After that, he turned around and held out his left hand, hospital gown in it, for the woman to take. He heard the sound of clothes falling off a body and could feel his hospital gown being taken away. He was aware that if he looked back at her, he might die a painful death. It's also likely that seeing a woman like Konan naked in front of him would make him blush. Since lust was an instinct and not an emotion, the blonde could feel things like sexual hints and other things. That was clear when Naruto changed into the bestial berserker Henkin, bestial beast. In that form, he only used his animal instincts to fight. He thought that the desire to reproduce oneself in another person was built into every person. Those urges and instincts were hard to control. In fact, it was one of the hardest things in the world to control them because fish swim and birds fly because that's what they were programmed to do. People were some of the cruelest animals, and they hadn't really changed over time to be anything else. But he knew that people could still love in a world full of hate, like the old man who gave him the Shiromi Kirin. No. Tsurugi. Madara had told him that like love, hate is an instinct. He said that it was an instinct to hate something or someone. Naruto had only loved Madara as a father, so he hadn't found love yet. He hated everything and everyone in the Hidden Leaf Village, but no matter how hard he tried, he would never be able to get those people and things he wanted. What exactly did he want to get back? He knew too well. He heard Konan telling him that he could see her again. She was folding her old clothes and putting them away. Naruto said, "I'll have my Zetsu take care of your needs and wants. I suggest you drink some water right before the procedure." As he left to get ready for the last parts of the procedure, he looked back and saw Konan looking down at the floor with a worried look on his face. He stopped in his tracks and looked at her again. He made a familiar hand seal and made a shadow clone, who left the room right away to get ready. He got a chair from the corner of the room and put it next to Konan's bed. He caught the woman with blue hair's attention. "You looked uneasy. Zetsus don't make great company and they're loud, annoying and obnoxious. Even I don't like Zetsus, but they have their uses, so instead I'll be your company," replied Naruto to the unstated query. Instead of yelling at him for what Konan would see as a sign of comfort, which Konan would normally do because it made her feel weak and useless, she didn't. But Ryu Yokazi wouldn't show any sign of comfort, so she let him do what he wanted. Instead, she didn't worry about it because she knew Naruto cared about her, but she wasn't sure how. Because of this, she smiled a small, soft smile, which was not like her at all. When she met Ryu for the first time, he was a cold, heartless jerk who never showed any emotion. He was mean and good at what he did. The people around him were like puppets that he could play with, like bottles on a shelf or dirt under his foot. He was both sneaky and calm, which was a dangerous mix. He played with his friends and prey like they were games. The way he acts and talks has changed recently, though, she noticed. He wasn't as mean, but he still played tricks on his opponents unless they were really strong. If they were strong, he liked to test their skills, which Konan thought was a compliment because it showed him how good they were. He also shared his thoughts and talked more. He was also more willing to work with her and sometimes listened to her. She had only seen him smirk, which was gross and crazy, but she had never seen him really smile. He also cared about friendship, even though he thought it took a long time and both parties needed to trust and understand each other. It was instinctual for her to know that whenever Ryu blushed, it meant he was very sexually interested in her. It was natural to want sex, just like it was natural to walk and talk. She kept her thoughts in check while she waited for the medical procedure to be over. All she could think about was her partner. She felt better knowing Rai was with her. At the same time, Naruto's shadow clone was sitting at a small desk with a number of beakers and vials in front of him. He was swirling, grouping, and combining blood in a small vial. The blood was coming together very well into a single stream. He sent his Zetsu to the land of water to get to the damaged but still standing hospital. There, they took blood samples from different members of his clan. Some of the blood was old and diluted, but some of it still worked, and he was able to bring them back to life with his own. He knew that Konan would need physical therapy after the surgery. This meant that it would take her longer to get used to her new body than it did for him, who has a natural ability to heal. So he was going to work out with her to help her reach her fitness goal. He would teach her Kenjutsu, which would be part of her physical therapy as well. We could seal if she was interested. Naruto put all of the blood he had gathered from the Uzumaki clan into a blood bag. It was time to start the surgery. Naruto's shadow clone came back to the single room with a blood bag and an IV. Naruto, the real one, helped Konan get into a comfortable position to rest. Clone Naruto followed Konan's left arm and vein and tapped his finger on hers to make her blood flow faster. Following this, the clone put the IV into Konan's arm and let the blood flow into her vein through the nozzle. He saw the blood rush into her, and she knew it was too late to change her mind. She did feel a little scared when she saw the red liquid. She clenched her fist, but she stopped when she felt the real Naruto's hand on hers. He had the most real look Konan had ever seen. His red eyes weren't half closed like they usually were. They seemed to have life in them. That's what she thought. In order to calm down, she tried to finish the task quickly. Naruto did everything he could to make her feel better, but he wasn't very good at feeling sorry for other people. After a few hours, Konan was still sleeping in the same bed, with Naruto standing still and watching over her. The next day, Konan was back on her feet, and she could tell right away that something was different. It felt like a lot of weight had been taken off her core. As Ryu said, her chakra levels went through the roof, making her stronger and more resilient. Her health and healing also got better, so she could heal from major wounds in a few days and minor ones in just a few hours. At this point, Konan and Ryu were facing each other and were ready to begin physical therapy. They could have just slammed their fists together and spoken. Since it was just a spar, no one was really hurt. When Konan aimed a punch at Naruto's head, he blocked it with his palm. He then tried to elbow her in the collarbone, but she stopped and said, "Again," and they began sparring again. Naruto's Sharingan eyes let him see all of Konan's moves ahead of time. She was also very good at taijutsu, so she could keep up with his attacks. The fights got tougher as the days went on, but Konan was able to keep up with him, even after hours of non-stop sparring. She wasn't out of breath or panting. Naruto stopped the sparring matches quickly by saying, "I think that's enough." "I think you said you were interested in Kenjutsu, right?" Konan asked the blonde. He nodded to show that he was right. Naruto took out 2 bakken, which are wooden swords, and threw one to Konan. She grabbed it tightly in her hand. "You're giving me a stick?" Konan asked as she looked down at the wooden sword again. "My father told me that a master with a wooden stick shall always defeat a novice with a steel sword," said Naruto. He was in a traditional Kenjutsu stance when he fell. Naruto told Konan that the space between her feet was wrong, so she did the same thing. After an hour of fighting, Konan had a lot of bruises all over her body and was in a lot of pain. Hence his desire for wooden swords. Without them, she would have died. Naruto said, "Sloppy." Konan couldn't yell at him because what he said was true. The space between your feet is always off, making you easy to knock down like a domino where your opponent would kill you. Your eyes just track my sword when you should be watching my body. You swing your sword around like it's a stick and don't think of your weapon as an extension of your body. If this was serious, you'd be dead, Naruto yelled. He knew Konan would be bad at Kenjutsu, but he didn't expect Konan to be horrible. He stabbed Konan in the back with the wooden sword. "However, being a teacher to you, I'll assist you as much as possible. First I will teach you the proper stance where you can adapt it to fit your own style." He walked up behind her and put his soft hands on hers. Konan's back touched Ryu's firm chest, and she noticed how close they were. With his help, she was able to learn the right way to stand, even though she blushed quickly. Now they were in the same field across from each other. "My father explained Kenjutsu to me like this. A Kenjutsu wielder is always like the 5 natures, each person representing a different nature. According to Naruto, my father called me wind and lightning, ferocity and swiftness. leaving my opponents no time to attack because of my aggressive and fast attacks. We will spar again, and if I see a mistake, I will discipline you," said Naruto, who picked up his sword again. The way he trained Konan was a lot like how Madara taught him Kenjutsu, except that he would tap her on the body instead of hitting her over the head with a cane. When the Kenjutsu sparring started up again, Konan's more experienced teacher beat her. Naruto would teach Konan the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu later in the week to help her train faster and better. Because Konan's chakra levels were reset, she was able to keep a lot of clones in balance. It wasn't as good as Naruto's, but it was good enough. So, every day, Ryu and Konan's copies would work on Kenjutsu while Konan's real copies worked on Fuinjutsu. But Konan wasn't bad at Fuinjutsu like he was at Kenjutsu. Naruto had to help her sometimes by putting his hands back on top of hers and showing her the right way to do things. During the whole week, Konan was getting better with Ryu's help. Her clones were strong enough to fight Ryu's clones, but when she got rid of them, she got a terrible headache that Naruto could heal with his medical ninjutsu. Naruto could also see Konan's own Kenjutsu style, which he had trained himself. He thought it was impressive. It combined Konan's thin build and speed to give her an advantage. She was also unpredictable because she was new to the world of shinobi, which was a good thing. People said that he was very unpredictable. Konan's style was a lot like water, and her movements were smooth and quick like wind. Naruto, on the other hand, stood in a very different way. He stooped down, waiting for his opponent to attack. His legs were evenly spaced, and he kept his sword by his side or close to his temple, ready to respond to shuriken and kunai attacks at any time. Konan's feet were together, which let her move quickly and over short distances. She could also levitate with her papers, which might have made any weakness useless. She held out her sword with the point pointing down to the ground. She liked to do the Tanbogiri with one hand, while Naruto used both or one of his hands. It looked like she was standing stiffly, but that was just a trick. Her frame was pretty thin, so she could avoid attacks or change into her paper form. How good she is at sealing. Even though it wasn't even close to Mito Uzumaki or Naruto's, it was pretty cool that she could copy Naruto's wrist seals, though she had to wear something instead of having them on her skin. She added more seals to her birthday teko because of this. She might have learned how to do that from Nagato, who was also an Uzumaki. Naruto and Konan were now standing across from each other in the same field. Naruto took out the dragonfly cutting sword, Tanbogiri. No. Tsurugi, and Konan took out the white lotus bud sword, Shiromikiren. Naruto had to be careful. The Tanbogiri could cut through almost anything, but not the Shiromikiren. Knowing that the Shiromikiren can turn anything it touches into snow, even skin and bone, Konan became very wary. They both jumped into the stances of the other person and charged at them. When their swords hit each other, metal and sparks flew everywhere. Naruto's fierce style versus Konan's cool one. Naruto stomped his feet to try to knock Konan off, but she jumped up and away. As he built up speed, he tried to stab Konan, but the flat side of the Shiromikiren blocked it. They jumped away from each other and then ran back at each other. Konan tried to hit Ryu with his sword, but Naruto saw her empty hand go by him instead. He was ready to block it because he knew what Ryu was going to do next. He almost got a terrible cut on his side when he quickly moved out of the way to catch her as she passed out. Konan clenched her teeth at the man she saw break her defense by grabbing her hilt with the tip of his blade and throwing her to the ground. He chased her and tried to stab her, but she rolled away and tried a vertical gash. But it didn't work because he took a small step back and missed the Shiromikiren by a hair's breadth. If he hadn't moved, half of his face would have been cut in half. He took 3 shuriken out of their seals and threw them at Konan. She blocked them with her own sword. After blocking the shuriken, Konan saw that her opponent and teacher were no longer there. Kanon used the Shiromikiren's flat, reflective side to see Naruto coming up behind her and getting ready to stab her in the back. She turned her body around to avoid being stabbed, then cocked her arm and cut Naruto diagonally across the chest and shoulder, leaving a pool of blood on the ground. Konan smiled briefly before it went away when Naruto burst into a cloud of smoke, showing that she was fighting a shadow clone. She looked back and heard clapping. Naruto was staring at her without any emotion. Well, if you defeated my shadow clone, it certainly means that you're already at expert level of Kenjutsu. We made amazing time with the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. It helpfully reduced the time needed to train you, Naruto said in a nice way. Konan put the Shiromikiren inside her right teko and sealed it. And both of them went to the graveyard on the mountain to get supplies for their next mission. The next mission was coming up, and Konan was getting ready for it. She was putting on her Akatsuki cloak and adjusting her new hair clips when the door to her room rang. It didn't surprise her to see Ryu waiting for her in his Akatsuki clothes after she let the person in. To begin the conversation, Ryu said, "I'd like to talk to you about Obito." Konan knew this was going to happen because she knew so much about the Uchiha pretender. "I think he has the Mangekyo Sharingan. His dojutsu, the Sharingan, is very strong," Konan agreed. "From what I know, he is well versed in fire release, but the greatest thing you need to worry about is his near-invincible technique. I don't know what it's called, but I know it's a space time ninjutsu on a massive scale, maybe even surpassing that of the Hiraishin. With it he is able to send parts of his body to a dimensional plane while he leaves an afterimage of himself behind. When he sends his body into the plane he becomes intangible, any and all attacks will simply phase through him and can phase through objects like a ghost. However, he can only maintain his intangibility for 5 minutes, and he can reset the time limit when he phases back into existence. So continuous attacks will be key to his defeat, and if you can touch and hold him, even if he becomes intangible, you too will become intangible with him, so therefore you can attack him. He will also try to suck you into his dimension, that's the only time when he's solid and can be attacked," explained Konan in detail, with Naruto taking all of it in. He was sure that the Kumonju no Waiki, 9 masked beasts of bravery, and his other Kamiyonanayo technique would help them win the battle. "No matter what," Naruto said, "thank you, that information will help." Before Naruto could leave, Zetsu showed up and opened up the extension of his Venus flytrap to show himself in many colors. "Leader Sama has asked for both of you," Zetsu said. Naruto and Konan closed their eyes and did the ram seal. Their minds were taken somewhere else, leaving their bodies behind. When they woke up, they were in a dark cave with stalactites and stalagmites and a small lantern in the middle that had a flame moving back and forth. Nagato was the only person in the room who wasn't living as Yahiko. "Ryu. Konan. I'm glad you're here. I have a mission that is best suited to your unique skills and talents. But first, Zetsu told me that your many assignments in the Land of Water went well. I commend you on your work and the money that the Akatsuki have earned from the Mizukage. She sends her thanks, especially to you, Ryu." Pain spoke without making any facial expressions, but his words sent a cold shiver up Ryu's spine. "The Akatsuki have been recently contacted by a politician from the Land of Wind. He demanded that the organization send among their best agents for this assignment. And I can't send Hidan and Kakazu since they would only draw attention to themselves in the organization. Deidara and Sasori are not suited for this given Sasori's past with the Land of Wind, and Itachi and Kisame are currently occupied with another mission. Since this politician asked for the best, I will send the best. You too will journey to the Land of Wind and complete the mission. I have immeasurable faith in your abilities, so please keep up the standard." Nagato was about to leave before something happened. Almost causing him to forget something. "Oh, and Ryu, check page 23. As soon as Nagato's astral body left, Naruto's and Konan's soon after. When they were back in their own bodies, Naruto caught a glimpse of Zetsu holding a bingo book out of the corner of his eye. He took Zetsu's book and turned it to page 3. He stared at the page with a frown, as if he was waiting for it to catch fire at any moment. He looked over his shoulder and at the tips of Ryu's toes to get a better look. She had even more bounty than Kakazu. Big black letters were written on the page. "Ryu Yokazi is wanted for having sex with, and fornication with the Godem Mizukage, Mei Terumi." Because there were so many zeros, she didn't want to read the price on his head. At this point, Ryu Yokazi was a wanted criminal in 4 different countries. Naruto cursed that woman as he put chakra into his right eye and used Amaterasu on the bingo book, which turned it into ash in an instant. He dropped the book that was on fire and left the base. With Zetsu smiling and merging into the ground, and Konan, who thought it was funny that such a crime was possible, following him. Near the graveyard at the base of the mountain, Naruto was waiting for his partner to get ready. He was happy with her progress in sealing because it was a hard form of shinobi arts. He also had faith in her, which was very unusual for Naruto to say. But at the time, he was having doubts about his beliefs. He remembered what the nice old man had told him. At first, he didn't believe that random acts of kindness could keep something as strong as hatred at bay. The old man may have been right, though. There may have been hope in the world, and sometimes the simplest things are the hardest to grasp. There are times when you look for a simple thing that you lost and find it right in front of you. Naruto didn't believe in kindness or other good things. He wasn't sure what to think about being kind and friendly. He might not have been able to do both. Not at all. He wouldn't have given Konan those hair clips if he wasn't kind. Was it just natural to be nice to other people when they're nice to you? What made you do it? What makes people do the things they do when they say they love someone? Those were the questions that were like balloons in Naruto's head, ready to pop. He had also noticed that his personality had changed in general. His tone was less hostile and more neutral, and he said sorry for small things. He couldn't understand why he chose to live in this awful world. He also had a feeling that something was off, like it wasn't real or something was strange to him. He couldn't explain it. Did he still have the things that made a person that he thought he had lost? He couldn't say it wasn't there, even though the feeling was weak. He would say it felt warm, not cold like winter or hot like summer. Instead, he would say it felt more like spring, opening up like a flower in the sun. He was aware that the way he was feeling was caused by something or someone outside of him. But the way I felt. It was tiny, like a butterfly, but so full of life. When he gave Konan her birthday gifts, he felt it. The way she smiled made him feel something. It was small but they're all the same. He didn't know what he was feeling. Emotions weren't real to him. The only time he showed emotion was when he wanted to say something by acting angry. He was good at it, but he didn't know it. But the way he felt made him want to live again. The word that other people would use to describe him is not full. In both literal and figurative ways. Because he was born to be a Jinchuriki and is no longer a jailer, he was like an empty vessel. The prison that held the beast was empty. And everything about his mask was gone. But he only felt anything for Madara. It was just as natural for him to love and hate as it was to walk and talk. No matter how sick it sounded, Madara was the father he wanted and longed for. The man looked at him and seemed annoyed when Naruto did, upset when Naruto was upset, and angry when Naruto was angry. That's not what a father should be like, right? Having his own family was the most important thing in Naruto's life, even more important than his long-lost dream of becoming the Hokage. He didn't have one as a child. After all that, Naruto still didn't understand what having children was for other than just staying alive as a species. They were loud, spoiled, and always getting into trouble. In Kirigakure, he saw siblings fight like they were immortal enemies, and no matter how many times their parents told them not to do something, they did it anyway. That wasn't true. He was just lying. There are things about everyone that make you want to yell at them, and kids are no different. But to still feel was new to the blonde. Not only that, but he would have to hide his face even more because the people of the Land of Wind were smarter than people from most other countries. They are smart and sneaky, so be careful around them. He didn't have to turn his head to hear footsteps coming up behind him because he could feel Konan's chakra coming from behind him. Naruto was better than Madara when it came to senses. Unlike Madara, who didn't decide to improve his rare gift, he couldn't tell the difference between chakra signatures very well. But because he had fought Hashirama Senju so many times, he could feel his rival's chakra signature anywhere. When it came to her chakra, Naruto could tell that Konan was different from other people. Yes, it felt like Uzumaki chakra now, but hers was soft like flower petals and warm like the sun in the morning. He knew from Madara that everyone's chakra had a unique sense to it. And there aren't many words that could describe it. Kanan, who didn't have her blank, neutral look on her face, asked, "Should we go?" Naruto gave her a nod and used the Kamiyonayo to call the Suzaku, vermilion bird. Naruto jumped onto the Suzaku's back, which made Konan raise an eyebrow. Doesn't he do that to get around? From his seat on the bird, Naruto told the bird, "Get on." Konan wasn't sure what was going on, and her doubts grew when the huge red bird looked at her with its coal-black eyes. To avoid looking at the bird, she politely told Konan, "No thank you," and closed her eyes. Instead, Naruto sprang off the bird and hit Konan in a bridal style, which made the woman with blue hair yell. The man put the woman firmly on the bird, and her back touched his strong chest. The Suzaku took off like a rocket after getting a mental order from its master. It flew into the sky. Kanan had flown before, but not this fast or this high. When the wind hit her face, it felt like bricks were being thrown at her over and over. She was holding on to the bird's feathers with both hands, like a desperate child who doesn't want to fall off. The bird flew straight up into the air, faster and faster. Konan closed her eyes in fear because the bird was flying so fast. She didn't look back at the man behind her because she was too focused on herself. Her normally well-kept hair was flailing around like crazy, and some strands were whipping against her face. She could feel her death coming, and there were times when she thought the man behind her was acting funny. As the Suzaku flew through the air, it cut through the atmosphere faster and faster, faster than the wind. She could feel her death coming. But only for a moment. Nothing else came but this happy feeling. When she opened her eyes, she saw the Suzaku flying steadily above the clouds. It was early in the morning, but the sun shining over the clouds made the white shapes hard to see, giving them new shades of red and gold. It was amazing, real beauty in front of her eyes. She felt envious for a moment that Kumogakure was waking up to such a show. She was amazed by the sun when she looked up at it. Its warm rays felt good against her and through her clothes. They bathed her in light and warmed every part of her body that was cold. She thought she was seeing the world's natural beauty and wonder, which is the purest form of art. There were no words that could describe how she felt. The sun and the orange red clouds made her feel of content. Like nothing in the world could kill this mood. When she turned around to look at Ryu again, he was looking into the sun. For a split second, she thought she saw a flash of ocean blue cross his eyes. Blue was the color that showed the sky. But as soon as it went away, Naruto's eternal Mangekyo Sharingan took its place in his right eye. His left eye still had the normal Sharingan. He had golden hair that looked like it had all the shades of yellow in it, like sunflowers, which was funny given where they were. To her, yellow was a very special color because it could make her feel so many things, all of which were good. A picture may say 1,000 words, but a color can say a few words that are very meaningful. The light hit his skin hard, making it shine like diamonds and other precious stones. There were also times when it was firm, but it was soft like feathers. No matter how much you look at someone, you might only find half of what you're looking for. She moved closer to his chest and found that he didn't fight back or move because he was too focused on the light in front of him. Naruto whispered in Konan's ear, "Sorry if this is late, but I knew you wanted to do something special for your birthday. This is the best I can give you. Happy birthday." Konan smiled a little and could feel the warmth of her happiness spreading as far and as strong as the sun. Kanan kept looking into the light and said, "It's almost like a painting." To finish her thought, Naruto said, "And the sky is its canvas. My father told me once, that everything in this world is different from the leaves among the trees, the stones amongst the mountains, mists upon the eve, sand on the beaches and clouds in the sky. Everything is different, even people, but yet, there was one thing, never changing always existed in this world of ours. We see it every day and yet we think nothing of it, it's open and free like birds on the wind, not restricted by law or order, it's vaster than the ocean and yet invisible as the future." What did he mean? Konan asked in a soft voice. The sky cannot be touched, like a dream. Many people hope to touch it one day, and like the sky, we all have one destiny, one sky, Naruto said with a small smile. It's possible that you don't have what makes you, you because you're waiting for someone to paint you. This is what Konan thought. But after seeing everything Ryu did for her, whether he meant to or not, she couldn't really thank him. He was kind, but he couldn't see it with those eyes of his. There wasn't another kind person in the world today. Sometimes you don't need to smile to show how you feel. Just doing something can heal a broken heart. What are you? He is the most handsome man I've ever seen. She knew it would take a long time to warm Ryu Yokeza's cold heart. But she felt every step. That even a man who is mean can change and become someone worth loving. They were flying through the clouds and air with the big red bird. The morning is just a pleasure. In front of Konan, Naruto put his arm across his stomach. He whispered to Naruto, "Hold on." Konan didn't understand what he meant, but she got the answer when the red bird dove for the clouds and turned itself around, turning them around so they were flying backwards. When Konan looked down and saw clouds, she stretched her arm out and touched the white puffs in the sky. It felt almost soft to the touch. The bird then dove all the way down into the white ocean in the sky. Konan could feel the wind scream against her face as she relished every moment. She briefly thought about where they were. But what was going on at the moment took her attention away. The clouds finally broke apart, letting the land and sky show. When she looked down, she saw many rivers that were cutting through the ground like knives. They were in the air over the land of rivers, which was next to the land of fire and the land of wind. They even had a very small hidden village that wasn't very important. In an instant, the Suzaku threw Konan off its shoulders and wrapped its claws around her arms. The blue-haired one gasped at the sudden action and then gave her blonde friend a mean look. The Suzaku then dive-bombed at very high speeds towards the ground. It was falling to the ground faster and faster. She calmed down because she knew nothing bad was going to happen. The earth was getting closer and closer. But the Suzaku suddenly spread its wings, just in time, and they didn't hit the bottom of a river. The big bird brought Konan's feet up to the surface of the water very slowly and softly. It then let her skate across the water with some help from the chakra in her feet. Konan hadn't had this much exciting fun in so many years that it was impossible to keep track. She could feel the Suzaku's claws leaving her arms as she slid across the water. She ducked under a branch that would have hit her in the face, and the sound of her moved a group of doves that were flying with her. When she felt something hard on her back, she turned around to see the bird's fox-eared mask pushing her along. Ryu was riding on its back with a small smile on its face. The bird's wings beat faster and stronger after Konan told them to. Konan could see a waterfall at the end of the river. She turned around and saw that the bird was gone. The only birds around her were the doves flying next to her. She was so excited that her heart was racing. She had never felt so alive in her life. She jumped out of the water like a swan to get to the other side of the river. She did this with her arms spread wide and her eyes closed, taking in everything around her. She turned around and opened her eyes. Ryu and his big bird flew under her and were ready to catch her. She hit the bird hard, but she was having too much fun to care. At least that's what she thought it meant when the bird cawed in victory. Its wings beat, and the wind cried in her ears. At this point, they were moving at a steady pace toward the land of wind. Someone was looking for someone else in the land of waves. It was Sogeki Bareru, a ninja from Iwagakure who was second only to Onoki in terms of strength. He was known for being fast and fighting naturally. All the people who knew Sogeki thought he was dangerous. He had been in the Third Shinobi World War and fought the Yondaime Hokage as a Jonin. He did, however, have scars from the fight. He lost his right eye and had a big, jagged scar that ran up his left cheek, just below his left eye. Sogeki wore her dark hair in a ponytail and slicked it back. She had golden eyes and eyebrows that were raised. He wore a normal Iwagakure flak jacket without a lapel, brown pants, and plain brown ninja sandals. The purple coat he wore had no sleeves and two tails. He also wore a torn red scarf with a tail sticking out behind his neck. He wore mesh armor on both arms and two black gloves that were missing the thumb and index finger. There were two holsters on his brown belt that held kunai launchers that were made just for him. The kunai launchers looked different from other weapons. A purple ring with 3 spikes went around the handle. The ring itself was white. The launcher's barrels were strange. They were long, thin pyramids that were lavender in color and turned white at the end. The purple handle had a thick, curved arc that served as a guard. The guard was made up of 6 thin, diamond-shaped spikes with silver edges. In reality, these were seals that held many needle-like kunai that could soak up chakra. One was on each side of Sogeki's waist. He was walking through a Land of Waves district at the moment. He learned that his target had been seen here by someone else. Of course it was hard because most people hadn't seen him and his face was never shown. He could only land on a picture from Konoha's bingo book, which didn't tell him much. He went up to strangers and asked them if they had seen this person. I yelled, "Hey, lady!" at a woman carrying groceries, and she looked at him with interest. Sogeki showed the woman the picture and asked, "Have you seen this guy? His name is Ryu Yokazi." The woman said, "No, I haven't seen anyone like that." And then she left. Sogeki would ask someone about their goals or ask a girl out on a date, get turned down, swallow his sadness, cry deeply, and then eat a bagel, which was his favorite food. One of the Iwa Shinobi's quirks was that he would act incredibly sad or depressed when he failed a mission, which made everyone else act incredibly sad or depressed too. He also liked listening in on people, which got him into more trouble than once. As he walked down the street, he saw a strange store. He had one more store to go that was right on the street. It was a store that sold weapons. Let's check to see if this old man has seen the person. Sogeki yelled, "Hey, you old coot!" in a rude way. The nice old man behind the counter saw the Iwa Shinobi with his hands on his hips standing at the store's door. The nice store owner asked, How can I help you, young man? The old man looked at the picture and was asked if he had seen anyone like that. The man looked at the picture and hummed, MMMH. He was sure he had seen this person before, but where? His name is Ryu Yokazi, and he's tall and blonde, Sogeki said. The old man's mind then made sense of something. Why yes, there was someone like that in this store just recently, said the man. Really, where? Sogeki quickly asked. He walked into this store and I gave him a nice sword too. Don't know where he ran off to, but I think he was heading west, the kind old man said, feeling down because he had to travel more. Sogeki said, thank you, in a low voice and left the store with its arms drooping by its side. There was a dull, monotone voice that said, the thought of finding you here, someone as ugly as you surprises me to no end. He quickly pulled out his kunai launcher and pointed it at the person calling out to him on his right. The person was tall and handsome, but he had some feminine features that made him look a little androgynous. His hair was shoulder length and rose pink, with ruffles all over it, and his eyes were blue. He had a pink sash around his waist and wore a standard Konoha flak jacket. He also wore a green shirt with short sleeves. He wore dull pink apron over his legs that was open in the front and reached to his feet. His black gloves had pink stains on them. He wore simple ninja sandals and had the Konoha Hitai 8 on his forehead. His right arm was tattooed with many pink flowers going all the way up to his shoulder. Toge Bushu. It's been a while. What do I owe the pleasure to? Sogeki asked as he kept his kunai launcher trained on his old Konoha rival. Both men had tried to kill the other many times before, but they were always unsuccessful. Toge spoke slowly and repeatedly, just a friendly business proposition. Like, when you say, friendly, you really mean, fuck off. Sogeki laughed, which made Toge laugh too. Toge pushed himself off the wall and said, more or less it, but it looks like we share an enemy. First of all, you can stop pointing that toy at me, I'm not here to fight. After a few seconds of intense staring, Sogeki gave up and put the kunai back where it belonged, with the holster on his leg. Well, for starters, our common enemy happens to be Ryu Yokazi, Toge said. Sogeki bragged, as if, didn't take me long to figure it out. As a joke, Toge said, yeah, sure it did. This made Sogeki's eyes twitch a little. Toge was annoyed by his rival's sarcastic tone, so he asked, do you even know anything about Yokazi? This made Sogeki scratch his head. Toge began walking down the road with Sogeki following behind. Of all the hidden villages, Konoha knows the most about Yokazi. Since both of our villages want him to die, we might as well share what we know. So, got any tips? Sogeki asked with a cool head. He put his hands behind his head. Yokazi has been described as a man trained to be the ultimate killing machine, without emotions or morals holding him back. It seems he has been trained in all forms of shinobi combat and abilities. Everything we can deduce about him is that he is someone to not take lightly, as he is opportunistic as a predator. He will look for any sign of weakness and quickly exploit it, where he will kill you, explained Toge, and Sogeki listened. Also, seeing a Konoha shinobi and an Iwa shinobi walking together was pretty strange. As for abilities, he has affinities towards wind, fire and lightning natures. Genjutsu master coupled with his Sharingan makes him deadly at Genjutsu. Taijutsu is supposed to be high according to reports, and he has near unmatched power in Fuinjutsu. Master at Kenjutsu and quite an aggressive style, leaving no time for anyone to counterattack. Known to taunt his opponents to throw them off edge, known stealth and infiltration master can sneak into the highest security areas in the world, and according to the bingo book of Kumo, he can summon and control multiple beasts similar to the puppetry of Suna. That means he's from Suna, Sogeki said. Toge replied, his origins are still unknown, but it doesn't matter. As if, he's going to be 6 feet in the ground once I'm done with him, said Sogeki. Yokazi will not be an easy opponent, also he may have other abilities that he has yet to show. Not only that, he has a partner with him making your job harder, chided Toge in a monotone voice. Please, as if. The only people who can beat me are the Kages and the Yondaime Hokage. Yokazi will probably be nothing compared to them. Sogeki spoke with arrogance. Don't come crawling back to me when you're a bloody mess, told Toge. Sogeki said, as if I would get my pretty coat covered in blood. The two shinobi then went their separate ways. As soon as the sky stopped falling and they were no longer surfing the clouds, they were on the Suzaku and flying toward the land of wind. It is known for its deserts and scorching heat that can dry out your skin in just hours. The Land of Wind had rough terrain and harsh weather. A lot of people have died in the deserts because they ran out of water or went in the wrong direction. Sometimes it rained, and sometimes it sandstormed. If you got lost in one of the storms, no one would even find your bones when they went looking for you. In order to make up for this, the people of the land built cities on the oases that stood out among the valleys and sand dunes. Naruto had no idea how the people who lived in this land were able to deal with such a harsh environment. He had never been to the Land of Wind before, and his first thought was not very impressive, then not very creative, and finally dull. He thought the Land of Wind was dull. He had to be here for a reason, though, so he was going to deal with it. The capital was right in front of him. The Land of Wind's capital city had a lot of buildings with spiraling towers and interesting colors. On top of these buildings were pointed domes in a bunch of different bright colors. The city streets were lined with lots of palm trees, and rivers ran through the city and out into the oasis. It was hard for him to believe that there were rivers and lakes in the middle of a desert. Knowing that this kind of bird would probably get people's attention, Naruto threw the Suzaku away and began to fall to the ground with Konan following. Putting chakra on the bottom of their feet made the fall less painful, and the fine sand took in some of the impact. The noble told them what they had to do when they met him at his house. Naruto watched the people go about their daily lives as he walked through the streets with Konan by his side. He didn't understand why they wore different dresses over other dresses in colors ranging from gold to purple. They also wore turbans to protect themselves from the sun and cloaks and furs that he hadn't seen anyone else wear outside of India. Since Naruto was not from the Land of Wind, he didn't know much about how people dressed and what their traditions were. He turned to look at Konan and saw that she had stopped and was staring at the noble's house, which was where they were going. The house had 3 stories and was decorated with all the colors of the rainbow and homey things. A lot of people would have thought the house was cleaned every hour because it looked like it was sparkling like gold all the time. As someone who is used to seeing capital buildings in the Wind Country, it had the typical look of one. There was silence as the 2 Akatsuki members walked through the doors to meet with the client. As soon as the servants' dirty boots and shoes hit the shiny floor of the mansion, they scrambled like beetles to clean up the mess before their master saw it. Someone came up to Naruto and Konan and told them their master was waiting for them. That was all they said. They were led by a servant to a room in the mansion where the lord of the house was waiting for them. The servant opened the door and led them inside, where they saw walls and floors covered in tapestries and carpets of many colors and shades. They could smell incense in the air, which made it a little harder for them to see. There was a big, round man smoking a kiseru, a Japanese smoking pipe, on a carpet. His eyes were squinted, and his nose was so small that it was hard to see. He wore green robes with a cream-colored kimono underneath and a small necklace with a pearl on it. His mustache was thin and pointed up, and he had a small goatee. This man said, "Ah, you have arrived." He made a sign for Naruto and Konan to come up to him, and they did right away. They sat down in front of him. A respectful Gekish person said, "Please feel welcome in my home. I am Gekisho and you honor me by being here. As I said, I'm honored to have such high-level shinobi in my home and presence. Would you like a meal? You must have traveled a long way and be very tired," Gekisho asked. The 2 shinobi politely declined, which didn't bother him. Konan was thanked politely. "Thank you for your hospitality, Gekisho. Sama. I am Konan and this is my partner, Ryu Yokazi." Gekisho said, "Ah yes, I have heard your name whispered among the courts and streets, Yokazi-san." Naruto didn't answer the man, and he didn't show any sign that he knew what Gekisho said. However, Gekisho thought that you might want to know more about your mission, so he blew smoke from his kiseru. As you might or might not know, the Land of Wind, more specifically Sanagakure, has been falling into political and economical decline ever since Dato, the current daimyo, has officially entered office. Dato is a religious lunatic and hedonist. Not only has he been denying Suna the access to funds and missions, he has also been bleeding the village dry of all its wealth. The shinobi of the village and the village itself will soon be bankrupt. Such a thing cannot happen and must not happen, spoke Gekisho with a sneer, as Dato wasn't one of the people he approved of nor liked. Konan and Gekisho paid attention when Ryu said, "I see. If Sanagakure were to fall into disarmament, the Land of Wind would have no protection from outside forces whatsoever. Your allies and friends Konoha in the Land of Fire cannot interfere as it doesn't politically concern them. nor can they do anything about it, as it would be a violation of the peace and friendship treaty between wind and fire. And when the shinobi of Sanagakure lose their jobs and missions from lack of funding and economical grossing, they would eventually flock to Iwagakure, increasing the village's military might. And without protection and knowing Onoki, the Sandaime Tsuchikage would use the opportunity to invade the land of wind and expanding the land of earth's borders and influence with their new military. The remains of Sunagakure would eventually become a second Iwagakure, a second hidden village for the same country, along with another military potential in the form of a third Biju, tailed beast. With their new power and weapons, Iwagakure would later, now, or in the future invade the other nations, expanding even more of their influence. The other villages would fall under Iwa's new might, with only Kumo and their near-perfect Jinchuriki could rival them. As Kiri nor Konoha have any Biju under their thumbs, those villages would fall quickly. And if what I said were to happen, it would be the start of the Fourth Shinobi World War, and only Iwa will come out on top and would invade again, as the other villages would be recuperating from their losses, and since Iwa would have 2 hidden villages and 3 Biju, the entire world shall become the land of Earth. Affirmed Naruto. Konan and Gekisho were looking at him strangely because Rai had never spoken so much before. Gekisho asked, "Could you please repeat that?" This made Naruto's blonde eyebrow make a funny noise. Naruto and Konan later left the capital on foot. Kanan looked at Ryu and said, "You know you didn't have to repeat what you said word for word." Speaking, Naruto said, "I wish I knew that earlier." Konan said with some doubt, "I still can't believe our mission." Going back. Naruto was about to hear about their mission after repeating himself for Gekisho. He lied and said, "Yes, exactly that." But Gekisho knew Rai was right about one thing. The land of wind would follow if they lost Sanagakure. The only way to protect the land of wind is for a new daimyo to take his place. If myself or my rival were to take up the seat, then the land of wind shall not suffer. Even if I do not become daimyo, my competitor, who also happens to be a friend of mine, will take responsibility for the land of wind. He shares many ideals with me and we have known each other for a long time. But in order for that to happen, Dato must be killed. That made Konan raise an eyebrow. Get rid of a daimyo. In fact, Naruto didn't feel anything. From his point of view, they were going to do the country a favor. Now Dato will be heading off on a journey to Sanagakure to inspect the village. It will take him a few days to arrive, so between that time he must die. If you are seen and placed in the bingo book, there is nothing I can do to pardon your crimes. However, you have permission to kill any shinobi or people in your way. Although I prefer if you kept death at a minimum. Spoke Gekisho. Naruto and Konan gave this a nod and left the mansion. To get rid of a daimyo. End of flashback. Any sand in the area was blown around by the wind very hard. Anyone who got caught in the small particles went blind. The dust that was left behind blocked the sun and light. Everyone didn't understand how anyone could get around in the land of wind. It was awful to walk through the storm, especially for the shinobi who were carrying the daimyo on their shoulders in a litter, which is something noble people do. Who was fanning himself in his seat and didn't care that his subjects were protecting him. The amateur shinobi didn't notice that 2 other people were watching them from inside the storm. Naruto was told, "I'll get their attention. You kill the daimyo." Konan nodded and left. Naruto stopped his wind jutsu, which was making the dust storm, and walked gracefully toward the shinobi and the daimyo. Kankuro. The storm is moving away. Temari yelled from her perch next to the litter. Kankuro looked around and said, "I can see that. I had a feeling that this storm wasn't natural." Kankuro told everyone to be careful. The shinobi talked quietly to each other as they put the daimyo's litter on the sand and got ready to attack. When the dust and sand finally went away, Temari and Kanuro saw a black boot with a black cloak and red clouds on top of it. The person wore a mask on their head that looked like a scary skull. One side of the mask was white, and the other side had 10 red stripes that covered almost the whole left side. The mask also showed sharp teeth and a pointed chin. The person had their arms crossed in a careless way, as if they didn't think the shinobi was important. The Suna nin got their kunai out and got ready for battle. The 40 or so ninjas looked both nervous and sure of themselves that they could beat the unknown enemy. Kankuro yelled, "Who goes there?" Naruto thought this was the perfect time to make a name for himself in Suna, so he told her his name for no reason. It was possible to hear Naruto whisper, "Ryu Yokazi." All the shinobi were scared at this point. They knew and had heard about what the Yokazi no Ryu, Dragon of the Night Wind, had done. They were also not very excited to fight him. But they were Suna shinobi. They would never fail a mission unless they had no other choice. Get out of the way, or we'll have to use deadly force. Temari yelled as she got her big folding fan ready. To be honest, she didn't think they could beat such a famous and well-known shinobi by themselves. They did have him with them, though, so who knows? While focusing chakra into his left eye to prepare one of his strongest jutsus, Madara called it the absolute offense. Naruto said, whatever. A jutsu that was so strong and useful that even Madara feared and respected it. Kamiyonaniyo. Shikyu Tentu no Ibuki, Kamiyonaniyo, earth-reducing breath of heaven, said Naruto softly. And right behind him, gray ash began to rise from the sand. It was in big chunks that were moving around like waves and tides. There were billions of tiny pieces of ash in the air that almost covered the sun. Ash? Yelled Temari, who then asked. She didn't know what to think about it. Was it a brand new Keki Genkai that no one had seen before? Even though it looked like ash, each particle was actually a tiny blade. One particle would only do a small amount of damage, but imagine being hit by billions of needles and swords. Naruto could mentally control the ash, but if he moved his hand, the ash would move twice as fast, which was already pretty fast for battle. Another shinobi who wasn't very experienced asked, Ash of who died? In his mind, Naruto told the ash to fly at the shinobi who were being stupid and thought they could beat him by cutting the pieces with their kunais. But it wasn't a good idea because the ash blades were too small to see and there were a billion more, which didn't help. They were focused on cutting the ash that they didn't notice what was going on around them. If I were you, I wouldn't breathe it in, Rai told her. The stupid shinobi looked at him with doubt until they felt pain in their lungs and started coughing up blood, which made them choke and fall to their knees. Naruto, with his ash blades, cut their lungs open with them to attack them from the inside. Temari and Kanur were shocked by the show of power. They now knew that if they breathed in the ash, they would die soon after. Everyone cover your mouths and noses. Temari told everyone, and the Suna shinobi did as she said, putting on their face masks and turbans even though they knew the danger wasn't over yet. Naruto went for a more direct attack, direct with his ash on the shinobi. Some fell victim to the ash's sharp blades, but Temari kept others safe by using her fan to make air pockets and wind currents. Even so, the ash kept coming at her no matter how much wind she summoned. Naruto had a feeling that one of the shinobi was coming at him from the left. He turned his head and saw a big shinobi ready to punch him. But the ash wasn't just scary. It was also protective. He was ready to hit Naruto with his fist when he went to attack him. The ash, on the other hand, formed a small wall or shield around Naruto, blocking the attack and also cutting the shinobi's fist as it tried to pull away, which made the damage worse. The man looked at the damage while holding his badly bleeding hand in the other arm. Naruto told his ash to wrap around the shinobi's arm like a snake in his mind. And sure enough, the spiraling ash tore off the ninja's arm, leaving behind a bloody stump. The pieces fell to the ground and changed the color of the sand. Naruto told his ash in his mind to kill the ninja because he wasn't done playing with his prey. In that spot, it went all the way around the ninja's body and cut the man's body into tiny pieces. The sand under his feet was also stained with even more blood. When Naruto turned his attention back to the other shinobi, he saw two of them charging at him with their kunai drawn. It was clear that they had not learned from what happened to their friend. Ryu made his ash fly at the shinobi so that they would die the same way their friend did. The ninja stopped quickly out of fear. It was like they could see death coming at them. But the ground around them shook at the core. Black secret technique, salamander. Yelled Konkuro as Salamander, his puppet, rose from the ground and protected the two shinobi from Ryu's ash attack. I thought to myself, Salamander's tough armor can protect people from attacks like those. Those two will be safe as long as they stay in there. Konkuro then cut the link between the chakra stings that controlled the puppet. He called back most of his ash and kept the rest by his side. He knew that lots of ash would be all it took to cut through the puppet's defenses. He didn't have the time or patience, though. Hayden. Fujin, ash release. Fujin, Naruto said as he held out his gloved hand and pointed to the sky. He then threw some of the ash together to make 3 balls the size of his palm, which moved around each other like planets orbiting a sun. The 3 balls were then squished together and put under a lot of pressure, making them about half the size of Naruto's palm. The Hayden. Fujin is the control of the Chikyu Tentu no Ibuki. It let Naruto shape and condense the ash into weapons and other things. It also made it sharper so it could easily cut through steel, and it burned and stitched up anyone it touched. It was based on the same idea as Enten, Kagutsuchi, which changed the shape of the ash. Naruto bent his arm toward the puppet while holding the ash balls in his palm. There were unimaginable speeds at which the small balls flew, making it easy for them to get through the puppet's defenses and armor. The shinobi on the inside jerked when the two balls hit them, but they stopped right in front of their faces and stayed there. The balls inside the puppet let go of all the tension that had been building up when Naruto snapped his fingers. The balls turned into spikes that stuck out of the puppet. Bloody all over. Because of what was done, the puppet salamander is no longer useful. The blonde in a hood and mask told him about the ash and the billions of blades that were clumped together to make it look like a cloud. Kankuro clenched his teeth at the man for killing his friends and breaking one of his puppets. He pulled out 2 sealing scrolls that held the rest of his puppets. While Naruto pressed together even more ash to make 5 small balls of ash. Temari told her stupid brother, Kankuro, don't fight him by yourself. He hasn't even moved from where he was when we started this fight. But no one was paying attention to her because the shinobi were also behind Kankuro. It was the ninja who killed the kunai that had explosive tags and balls on them. Kankuro got his other 2 puppets out of the box. Crow and Black Ant, and the chakra threads were used to guide their movements. Kankuro said, okay, surround him and use wind jutsu and exploding tags to keep the ash away. The Suna ninja roared in agreement as they charged at Naruto, who kept his emotionless face hidden behind his mask. As he watched, the ninja dodged his attacks and moved closer to him with the help of Kankuro's puppets. Because his Sharingan knew what each person was going to do next, he knew they were going to attack him from all sides. They were really good at fighting off his ash, so he had to praise them. He held back on purpose, though, to see what they were doing and to call out the last Suna shinobi who was hiding near the daimyo. Kankuro told his 2 puppets to get ready to capture Ryu, surround him and fire off every explosive tag you have. All of the shinobi then set off their bombs at Naruto, who used the Heitan Fujin to protect himself by making a shield around himself. The ninja saw the intense array of weapons being used against their enemy explode after explosion. When they were done, a big cloud of dust covered everything, so they couldn't see what the continuous attack had done. Both Temaru and Kankuro narrowed their eyes, hoping to see something. But there was nothing there because Ryu's shield wasn't broken. From the outside, the shinobi were a little sweaty because they couldn't see their enemy because of the shield that was around them. In its place, they saw the dome of ash change into spears, which showed that no one was inside the ash barrier. And they couldn't think straight as the spears shot forward and went straight through the ninjas' bodies. They kept going after shooting through the shinobi cannon fodder. The ground and sand were stained with their blood. It was very dangerous because there were only a few ninjas left, about 7. Temari searched everywhere around her. Now, they'd be easy to hit. From the corner of her eye, she saw a black and red figure of one of her friends searching the area. Ryu Yokaze, armed with a kunai, stood behind him. As the ninja turned around, Temari yelled, "Behind you!" He saw a kunai ready to cut his throat. "That's not aimed at the right person," said a voice. When Naruto turned his head, he saw someone he had never expected to see so soon but wanted to capture and kill for his own reasons. A story about Gaara no Sabaku, of the sand waterfall. It was perched on top of the daimyo like a proud eagle, ready to defend the skies. Naruto just stood there and looked at the Jinchuriki. Right now, he had the chance to move the Eye of the Moon plan forward by taking the Ichibi from Gaara and sealing it in the Gedo Mazo. His main goal wasn't to catch the Ichibi, but they would do that later, when the hunt for the Biju started. He didn't say anything, but instead cut the ninja's throat and threw the kunai at Gaara. The sand shield appeared and shielded Gaara from the kunai. He looked closely and said, "That sand is as fast as always." Behind Naruto, where he had hid the ash in the sand after escaping the so-called attack from Kankuro in the now dead shinobi, an ash cloud appeared out of nowhere. Someone once said, "The best defense is a good defense, and the best defense is a good offense." There was a big stare down between offense and defense right now. The sand of Gaara and the ash of Naruto. Gaara said, "I'll give you this chance. Leave now," as the cork on his gourd shook a little. "But if I were to leave, wouldn't you miss me?" Naruto joked. This made the redhead attack him with a lot of sand, and the blonde fought back with an equal amount of ash. Naruto was right about what would happen. This is because Naruto's ash was made to be more aggressive in battle. It easily cut through Gaara's sand, forcing the redhead off the litter and onto his home ground. While inside the royal carrier, Dato was complaining about the noise outside, as spoiled nobles often do. "What the heck are they doing yelling and screaming like that? It's really annoying," Dato said while reading a book. When the door to his litter opened, a figure was visible, but it was hard to see because the sun was shining behind the person and making them look like an angel. "Yes, servant, bring me something to drink and something fun to do," Dato said. The figure stepped forward just enough to show some of the person's features. The thin person looked like a woman, and her blue hair was pulled back into a small bun with an origami flower in it and flower hair clips on her left bang. The woman stretched out her arm in front of her and folded it into many pieces of paper. These were then wrapped around Dato, first trying to block his throat so he couldn't scream for help. Not long after, Dato was found lying dead in his own litter. He had died of suffocation. The woman herself broke up into paper sheets and flew away. Let us go back to Naruto and Gaara's fight. Gaara had no choice but to defend himself as his opponent kept throwing dark gray ash at him. He's never had to move around so much in a fight before. His opponent, on the other hand, hadn't moved yet. Gaara couldn't beat this person with just sand. However, he was in a better position because Ryu Yokaze was standing on the substance that Gaara was famous for. Gaara used the sand under Ryu's feet to try to grab him and crush him with the sand. When the sand tried to grab his leg, the Akatsuki member jumped into the air and landed on a small cloud of ash. Gaara chased after his foe by jumping on a sand cloud and using his powers to make it float in the air. Gaara had to use his own sand in his gourd if the sand from the desert wasn't enough for the ash. Gaara squished together a long strip of sand to make it harder and denser. Renden. Suna Shigur, successive shots, sand drizzle. Gaara yelled as he threw big sand balls at Naruto. Naruto hit back with big ash balls of the same size. Naruto yelled, "Hayten! Fujin," as he squished his ash into a huge ball as tall as he was and hung it above Gaara. Naruto wasn't going all out again because he wanted to see how good he was with the ash. Since Zetsus weren't good test subjects, this was mostly just a practice run. Gaara looked up at the big ball in the sky. Was the enemy going to fall on him? Instead, the ball started to split into many spikes that started to rain down on Gaara. The spikes that were already there split into even more spikes as they shot out of other spikes, creating a route. Like system of deadly ash spikes. Heard Tamari yell, "Gaara!" She was scared for her brother's safety, as she had seen the spikes that broke apart and how fast they were moving. Gaara, on the other hand, had raised his signature sand shield to protect himself, but some of the ash spikes had pierced and penetrated it. It barely held up against the attack, and he wasn't able to get out of the way in time. Since Naruto's favorite ash move didn't work, he decided to use ash's other benefit. He flexed his hand from on top of his ash cloud, which made the ash go back to its particle form and gather around the shield. Gaara didn't know what was going on, so he used some of his sand to make the Daisen no Mi, third eye. This let him see what was going on outside of his sand dome and see ash coming toward him until it covered his whole sand ball shield. The Hayten. Fujin was used again after the ash was put down. Gaara saw everything from the outside and saw the ash start to glow bright orange and look like sparks. The redhead didn't know what was going on, but he could feel his sand dome getting a little warmer. His sand was turning into glass. Naruto could also burn his enemies with ash that got high enough to reach over 1500 degrees Fahrenheit, and maybe even higher. That's where the name, Fujin, came from, because the jutsu used the wind to keep the ash sharp and the heat up like a flame. Gaara in the sand dome didn't understand what was going on. The sand was turning into glass right in front of his eyes, and the temperature was rising quickly. After 20 seconds, Gaara's sand was as smooth as glass and looked almost like a diamond. From the other side, he could now clearly see Ryu getting ready for another jutsu. Naruto called all of his ash back to him and squished it into balls about the size of his fingernails. With a wave of his arm, the ash flew at Gaara's glass shield at a speed that was almost scary. Gaara couldn't do anything but watch as the ash balls shook his shield and cut through his sand armor. The arms were so fast and sharp that they could cut through Gaara's armor. His glass dome broke, and because he was so tall, he fell to the ground like a rock. Gaara would probably have died from the fall if the desert sand hadn't shot forward and slowed him down. Gaara looked around at the state he was in. Around his body were cuts and wounds, and his clothes were torn in several places. He didn't like seeing his own blood because only 2 other people had been able to make him bleed. They are Sasuke Uchiha and Naruto Uzumaki. He laughed a little when he thought about his first and best friend. But it wasn't a good idea to think about the past right now. He had to beat his enemy right now. Who looked down at him from above, like a wolf or falcon on a high hill. This man made me angry. Gaara tried a lot of things, but nothing worked. His ash was kind of like the Sandame Cage's iron sand. Naruto could feel a big thing coming from the other side of the dunes. There were many chakra signatures coming together around him, but they wouldn't be here for a while. He knew the daimyo was dead, but he had the chance to catch the Ichibi no Tanuki, one-tailed raccoon. He moved his arm and told his ash in his mind to attack Gaara, who worked hard with the sand he had. Gaara had to do something before the man killed him. The Ichibi was set free, and the Beej's anger would hit the village. Gaara made a copy of himself out of sand under the ash and replaced himself with it to avoid getting hurt. At the same time, he was practicing his strongest offensive move, because sometimes offense could only counterattack. Naruto told his ash to stop attacking the Jinchuriki in his mind because he still needed the ship to be alive in order to get the Biju. Naruto wasn't interested in his old friends. Everything was the eye of the moon, or Tsukuyomi, to him. He would give up anything to get the eye of the moon if killing his old friends was the only way to get it. He could feel a lot of chakra building up to his left. He wasn't sure what Gaara was doing for a moment. But the buildup of chakra meant it had to be a strong technique, so he made more ash from his chakra and kept it by his side to get ready for what was to come. He got the answer when he felt chakra infused sand above him. When he looked up, he saw sand being pressed together into balls that looked like boulders and were even bigger than cannonballs. His plan was very similar to Gaara's, so it didn't take a genius to figure it out. He used the Hayden Fujin to make a shield of hardened ash above himself, and then he used his chakra to make even more ash particles to strengthen it. Suna Arare, sand hail, Gaara yelled as he threw the sand filled boulders on top of Naruto, who was safe in the ash. But the ash wouldn't be able to protect forever because it wasn't as hard or dense as sand or earth. Naruto jumped off of his ash platform and landed very gracefully on the soft sand. He did this to get away. When he turned around, he saw the sand hail falling on him. Naruto just barely avoided getting hit by the hail as it hit the sandy ground and sent small explosions of sand into his eyes, blinding him. He rubbed his eyes while avoiding the sand balls because he couldn't see and his eyes were itchy. The blonde didn't need the Sharingan to tell him where the hail was coming from, though, because he could feel it. He must have been tired to get to where the Ichibi Jinchuriki was. Things got more complicated by the fact that he could fly and maybe hide his huge chakra from sensors. Because of this, Naruto shaped his hand seals to do a jutsu that was perfect for the time and place. When Naruto used the jutsu, some of his chakra went to his heart, ears, and brain. He said, Atano Mayakudo Hibiki, Sonic Pulsing Echo. Naruto learned this jutsu from the Bat Clan, which was another animal he could call up. This jutsu sent ultrasonic sounds from Naruto's heart, where the pulses made the sounds. When the pulse hit something, it would bounce back to Naruto's ears, where his brain would make a detailed picture of everything around him, from people and places to trees and the very sand he was standing on. Even at night, Naruto could see more clearly than during the day. Unfortunately, Naruto couldn't see chakra like the Sharingan could, and the pictures in his head were black with white edges. At this very moment, Gaara was on his knees to his right, watching him closely, almost as if he were out for a trick. He was sure of what he thought because Gaara slammed his hands on the ground, making the sand move. Naruto would have to be on the defensive for now until he could see again. Gaara yelled, Sabaku Taiso, Sand Waterfall Imperial Funeral, as he sprayed Naruto with a huge amount of sand that could easily change the landscape. Naruto saw the image in his mind. Neith could always use that jutsu if things got too bad. But that wasn't the right time. Naruto jumped over the sand wave to get to Gaara, but it didn't look like he would be able to get away easily. A stream of sand shot out of the wave and grabbed Naruto's leg, sending him hurtling back into the stream. Even though the blonde could see the mental image his heart, ears, and brain were making, he couldn't fully avoid it since he was in the air. Gaara kept hitting the sand with shockwaves that were so strong they would kill the man. When he took off the sand, all he saw was a cloak that was badly torn and had red clouds on it. But there was no body or blood. Gaara narrowed his eyes in worry. He didn't kill the man. Instead, he ran away, and no one knew where he was right now. But he did think an attack from below would happen. During his fight with Kimimaro Kagaya, one of Orochimaru's most loyal servants. Gaara almost died at the hands of the servants. He only died of sickness at that time. Gaara could see the ash particles in the sand he had been using floating through the air right in front of his eyes. A lot of ash in the area flew at him very quickly. Gaara's sand shield protected him, but the ash whip that bit into Gaara's shield did not. Naruto got away by switching places with a big rock nearby. The rock was crushed instead of him, and he finally got his sight back. Naruto could immediately use the Haten Fujin to make a whip out of the sharpest ash particles. He could then make another whip in his other hand without letting the ash hurt his hand, and he could throw sharpened ash spikes from the whip as projectile weapons. The Chikyu Tentu no Ibuki was very flexible, so Naruto could also make other weapons depending on the situation, but the whip was his favorite. Naruto swung the ass whip horizontally at Gaara. Gaara dove under the attack, which made a big cloud of sand that prevented everyone else from seeing. But Naruto kept attacking. He hit the ground vertically while aiming for Gaara, which made more sand fly up. Gaara tried to use his catch and crush strategy once more. But it didn't work because Rai cut the sand easily and quickly with the ash whip. When Naruto cracked the whip, it threw ash spikes at Gaara. His sand shield was barely protecting him, but Naruto used his chakra to make it stronger. Gaara slammed his fist into the ground, making a fist out of sand that hit Ryu in the gut diagonally. The blonde was almost out of breath, and Gaara threw him into the air, where he landed on an ash cloud he had made. Gaara followed him again to make sure he didn't get away. Since he was an Akatsuki, he might know where they were going. That being said, there was something very wrong with this picture. Naruto looked at his chakra levels and saw that they were getting dangerously low. He felt bad that he had played with his prey for too long. Now that he was low on chakra, he knew what would happen, but he couldn't stop it. With the rest of his chakra, he turned the Haten Fujin into a pillar of burning ash that was taller than 10 men. He mentally threw the ash at Gaara as his last defense. Gaara hit back with a pillar of sand that was as strong and dense as the ash. The ash pillar wasn't as strong as it should have been because Naruto didn't have much chakra left. Gaara had to end the fight quickly because he was about to use his most powerful attack to kill the man in front of him. He clenched his teeth in anger as he got ready for the jutsu. Naruto could feel a huge amount of chakra building up in front of him. He was interested in what Gaara was working on because whatever he was about to send at him had to be strong since it needed so much chakra, which was the sum of many chunins. Psycho Zatai Kogeki, Shukaku no Hoko, ultimately hard absolute attack, Spear of Shukaku. Gaara yelled as he gathered the hardest things in his sand and pressed them together to make a halberd that looked like Shukaku's hand. Gaara threw the spear at Naruto, who was amazed at how fast it was and how easily it went through the sand and ash pillars that were in between them. Even going through his torso and continuing onwards until it left his body. Naruto began to cough up blood as the red-headed Jinchuriki finally beat him. He fell to the ground and kicked up sand as he hit it. He also failed to catch the Jinchuriki, which was understandable given the situation. The ash that Naruto called out spread out in the air and quickly turned into small particles that lost their sharpness. Gaara, on his sand cloud that could float, fell next to the Akatsuki member who had been knocked down. He walked up to the man and was determined to finish the job. He had given the man a fatal wound, so he wouldn't be alive for much longer, but they might be able to get the Akatsuki secrets from his body. This is your end. Strong words from Gaara as he shaped his sand to cover Ryu's neck and crush his throat. Looks like I failed, I wonder if he'll be mad, said Rai. Gaara looked at the man with a raised eyebrow, not sure what he meant. Over time, Ryu's whole body turned gray, and he started to break up into dead, gray flower petals. The only thing that was left of the man were the dead flower petals on the sand. Gaara couldn't believe he was fighting a clone the whole time. If so, when did the bad guys have time to make a copy? When Kankuro and Temari stood next to the daimyo's litter, they yelled, "Gaara!" They looked shocked on their faces. Gaara had to force himself to run to his siblings' positions after a long battle. He was shocked by what he saw when he got to the royal carrier. While sitting in his own litter, the daimyo's body was slouched a bit. His face was pale, and his eyes were a little blurry. Gaara looked at the dead leader of the Land of Wind and asked, "But how?" He finally realized what was missing. The Akatsuki always work with two other people. The daimyo was killed by Ryu Yokeza's partner. Gaara clenched his fist and gritted his teeth because he had been tricked. His name was on a lot of lists for Cage, but he couldn't figure out something so easy. Not only that, but their mission also failed. They would have to go back to the village empty-handed, which was even worse because many of his friends had died in battle. He at first thought that the Akatsuki were after him because he might become Kazekage in the future. But right now, he would mark Ryu Yokaze as guilty of this crime against the Land of Wind. Kong was sitting next to Ryu Yokaze's body while he was lying down somewhere in the Land of Rivers. Hu was lying on the ground with his eyes closed and holding the tiger seal. When he opened his eyes, he was back in his old body. It looks like the Divine Willow didn't work, Naruto said out loud to wake up Konan. Who was interested in him? The Bluenet asked, Divine Willow? One power of my Mangekyo. Using both eyes, I can make exact copies of myself that can send information back to me. This is called the Kamiyonaniyo, Tenrai Yanagi Seijun, Divine Willow's purity. But unlike the shadow clone, if you hit it, it won't run away. Instead, it will keep fighting and may even bleed. Additionally, I have the power to limit their power and give them full sentience if I desire to. This would allow them to think and plan on their own. Naruto told Konan about it, and Konan was shocked that such a jutsu existed. However, like the shadow clone jutsu, it sends information back to the original, but I see all the memories happening at once like a screen on a television but from different perspectives all at once, and it causes great stress on my brain where I have to regularly sort through the memories. It's also very draining on my chakra. If I have a dead body beforehand, then it will require less chakra to use, as I basically send my chakra into the body replicating myself because that person had chakra running through their body. Konan asked, how many copies can you make? 7, but only 4 if I don't have any dead bodies to use. Anything higher than that will be too hard on my chakra, and my mind can only handle 7 at a time, Naruto replied. When he first found out he had the power, he could only sue 2 people, and that was only when there were bodies around. He trained himself in how to use it until he was good enough at it that he thought those ways were better. Naruto could be in more than one place at once without using clones thanks to the Tenrai Yanagi Seijun. It was the perfect clone jutsu, even better than Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. However, it wasn't even close to the Nidem Hokage's invention when it came to how the numbers were spread out. I sensed that you killed the daimyo, so I took the liberty of sending a Divine Willow to Gakisho informing him of the success of the mission. Naruto spoke, and Konan agreed. Gakisho was happy about it, and he promised to pay the Akatsuki a lot of money. Naruto could see this through the Divine Willow's memories. And he's quite pleased with the result. Kongan asked, so what now? Naruto got up and said, let's travel until we are given a new mission. Konan joined him and they walked through the forest. For an unknown amount of time, they were walking. They thought they must already be in the Land of Fire by now. Zetsu surprised them by showing up out of the blue and telling them that Pain was pleased with how the mission went. However, the leader of the Akatsuki was a little angry that they weren't able to capture the Ichibi, even though that wasn't their main goal. Even Naruto was angry about it. But what was done was done. Going down the path. They hadn't talked because they didn't have anything to talk about. In his thoughts, Naruto thought about the feeling he had earlier. He had it again when he was in the clouds with Konan. He hadn't felt anything since Madara's or even before that, so why now? What caused it? Were the things that were on his mind. When what looked like the entrance to a big hot spring came into view, he felt better. He turned to look at Konan to see what she was doing, but her face seemed to be completely blank and neutral. We should go to the hot springs, Naruto said, which caught Konan off guard. There was such silence that she almost jumped out of her skin. Excuse me, Konan said. Let's visit the hot springs. After the long, hard day we had, I bet you want to relax, Naruto said as he walked to the hot spring without waiting for Konan to answer. Also, of all the onsens in the world, there were thousands. Would they ever meet someone who would cause them so much trouble that it would be impossible to handle? After a short time, both Akatsuki members made reservations at the hot springs and were shown to the bathroom that was right for them. Naruto found the locker rooms for men and took off his clothes. He then wrapped a towel around his waist to hide his pride from everyone else. He hadn't been to an onsen in what seemed like a long time. He thought about whether or not it would be fun for him. While this was going on, Konan found the changing rooms for the women's onsen. She took off all of her clothes and wrapped a towel around her body to cover it. She took out the bun in her hair, letting it stand on its own. She took out her flower craft and carefully put it on top of her clothes. The last thing she wore, though, made her very careful and protective. She got flower hair clips from Ryu for her birthday. Konan could say that the hair clips were some of her most valuable things, even though she hadn't had them for long. This was because she rarely got gifts. She put the flower hair clips next to her origami flower and then went to soak in hot water to ease her sore muscles. Naruto got into the warm water slowly, and as soon as he did, the heat made his muscles relax. He leaned his head back a little and took a deep breath in. That feeling came back to me. Even though it was only there for a second, it made me happy. What was going on with him? Naruto didn't bother to think about it, so he just calmed down. Konan jumped into the water without thinking about it as much as Ryu did. There was some worry in her that Ryu might try to spy on her in the onsen because he had touched her behind, which he had seen, run into a room naked, hinted at a performance of coitus, and then acted like he hadn't done anything wrong. Konan looked around at all the other women in the onsen with her. Due to her somewhat tomboyish personality, she had not interacted with many people of the opposite gender, so she wasn't sure what women liked. However, she did know that flowers were something that all women liked. Not thinking about it any longer. The hot water helped her relax, and she closed her eyes to be alone. Not so with Naruto. He was relaxing in the hot spring, and it seemed like nothing could bother him at that moment. But he was able to relax for a short time before he heard a bad sound, almost like giggles, coming from the barrier between the sexes. He tried to brush it off as something made up by his mind. He heard it again, though, which made him raise an eyebrow. Like before, he tried to forget about it. It was still funny, though. He turned his head just a little and saw a man laughing strangely through a hole in the onsen barrier. Nobody was too smart or stupid to figure out what was making him laugh. It was taught to him by Madara that women were sacred and stronger than men because they could do and handle things that men couldn't. Madara only ever feared one person, and that was his mother. He still does. His mother, who was his Achilles heel, was the only person who could bring Madara down. Naruto chose to use his very first jutsu, the one he had just made, to punish the pervert and make Konan feel better, who was on the other side. Atami wa aen ni toki kuken to uchu gijutsu no shirio ni inazuma no keikan no cho himitsu no shin no kyokudo no atami. Naruto said, lightning release, super secret true extreme pain of thunder and lightning experience to forever memorize for all eternity until the end of time. Space in the universe technique. He then gathered chakra into his right index finger and aimed it at the pervert behind him. He fired a small ball of lightning chakra at the pervert, which moved so slowly that it took a whole minute to reach them. When he finally got it, the man jerked back and forth uncontrollably while yelling in pain. His arms and legs were twisted in funny ways, and his eyes were almost bulging out of their sockets. His tongue was tied into many knots, and his eyes were wide and white as he felt himself being electrocuted. Finally, the lightning stopped arcing around his body, and he fell to the ground, sparking as lightning began to wind around him. When Naruto realized that the pervert was dead, he felt better. Back when he was training the blonde, he made that jutsu just to bother and prank Madara. And Madara couldn't really avoid it because he was old at the time. Being shocked when the old man woke up from a nap was always a shocker. He would end up on the ground, smoking, and hit Naruto on the back of the head with his cane, calling it discipline. Naruto shut his eyes and paid attention to the sounds around him. Hi Konohamaru, I had no idea you could use Raiden. He said this as he got up from the ground. When Naruto heard that name and voice, his eyes popped open. The same jerk was getting up from the ground when he turned around. The little steam had cleared up. Naruto saw that the man had long white hair, tan skin, and 2 red lines running down his cheeks. His eyes were black and bright. A higher pitched voice said, I can't. I only have natures for fire, earth, and wind. Naruto turned his head and saw a little boy with wet, spiky brown hair. He could feel the water moving to his left, which let him see the pervert a little farther away. He knew this man from anywhere. How could he forget someone like that? His old teacher and mentor was grumbling while sitting in the water. He was complaining that his research peeping was being interrupted all the time. Naruto turned around and saw himself in the water. He had sun-kissed blonde hair that was spiky and a genjutsu over his eyes that was almost a beautiful blue. What was he going to do to get out of this?
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.